Hey, this is Matt Earl, and welcome to Talking in Stations Daily Show. We're going to go into some EVE Online for you. So today we'll talk about the big move-up that happened over the weekend on Sunday, where the forces of Pappy moved from Catch all the way up to Iridia, so they can start attacking on the northern front, going through Fountain into Delve. We'll probably see that in the next few weeks. That's a big move, has a lot of strategic consequences, but the big news for that day yesterday was that over at least 300 Titans were moved. Some say as many as 1,000, so we don't really know. The other thing is today, the monthly economic report was released for July, and that probably has some news. Mostly there's a lot of high-sec mining going on, which stands to reason since nullsec, especially in the Delve area where a lot of mining was happening, is under siege. So a lot of those people will mine in safer areas, high-sec being one of those. How's it going, Caleb?
Where do you want to pick it up? Because there's quite a lot of interesting small details and morsels to actually bite into.
Yeah. Well, let's go to MER first, and we'll come back to the Titan move-op so I can get more information on that. I'll produce the MER. Let's see if we can get that up on screen. Okay, let's go through this. Let's see. The red line that you're seeing there is production. So
yeah, there's not much happening on the red line. That's really not. It's doing pretty much its thing. It's still dipping. It's been dipping, and it's a trend that's been going on over time. It's tied pretty much directly to overall activity and participation in EVE Online. The more important and interesting ones are the blues and the yellows.
Wait, before you go on, let's look at this chart and just give it some context. This is production versus destruction. You're going to see ships or things destroyed, things that are mined, and things that are produced. The red line is the one being produced. The gold line is what is being mined, and the blue line is actually what is being destroyed. And this chart only goes back to 2017, so it's only a 3-year. This is only the last 3 years.
Yeah, and as I said, even though of course you can go in and do the detailed analysis on what has been happening for the past 2 months or 3 months and all that stuff, they're usually carrying the trend line over a lot longer period. And if you take something like the end produced, it's pretty much been trending down, right? But the important one is the destroyed and mined. This is really where you're seeing this. These ebbs and flows based on very specific activity. And I just think it's funny that it's doing almost the opposite of what you would expect in a war. Usually you will see a gap building between destruction and mined, right? So mining will go down and destruction should go up when you are moving into more conflict and war times, right? Mm-hmm. In this case, you're almost seeing the opposite. You're seeing there's been a bit of an uptick on destruction from way back, but it's actually trending down, which is not what should happen during war. And this is back to what we've talked about a little bit when I try to explain the fact that when wars happen, some of the normal activity will go away. That means you go from many smaller and potentially faster destruction cycles to waiting for big hits, right? Everyone is like piled together and just focusing on bigger fights or bigger strategic things. So it goes from rabbit racing to elephant racing. And in this case, what you see is that you would also expect mining to go down, and it has gone down, but now it's trending back up. And this is also tied into the big changes from the resource and the economy team, because they've kind of fiddled with things, nerfed things, so we might be moving back to something more akin to what we had way back in the past. So you're seeing mining has primarily moved to high-sec, and null-sec mining is tanking a bit, but it's picked up so much that it's actually growing. So mining numbers are actually going up.
Mining numbers going up, most of that in high-sec as the war ravages Delve and that area. the thing is that Delve was the mining area. If you think about it, there was mining going on in Oasa and mining going on in Geminate. These are other Empire areas. But really, they weren't mining that much. They were doing a lot of ratting. And so the ratting continues, but the mining is kind of shut down in nullsec. So that a lot of that has been, a lot of those guys used to mine in nullsec. Since they can't do it there, they'll be attacked and not well defended because they're at war. They've moved to high sec. And I think that's clearly why you've seen what looks like a 20% jump in mining overall in high sec areas.
Yeah, and it's shifting back to almost similar to, well, now I'm going to be a little bit nostalgic, but it's almost shifting towards trends that look more like what we had before we had those big abundance and quality of life changes. We're going back to where high sec was the primary miners, volume and value wise, just because they have the opportunity to crab, and this is almost like getting rid of the self-sufficiency model. So I'm a little bit happy, but I'm not entirely satisfied because it's maybe a little bit too oppressive in the way that it's been done. But again, it's right on plan. It's the phase 2 almost coming to its conclusion, and of course this is Ratati's phase 2, not Vili's phase 2.
That's
and the next
CCP
phase,
Ratati.
Yeah, and the next phase is most likely going to be what he called the dynamic redistribution, and I'm very excited to see what that actually means and where he's going to put that added value for risk on field, right? So I think value will come back to null, but in a way where you can't just brute force it. I hope it goes on some sort of moon mining design. I just don't know if that's their plan.
Yeah. All right. So to translate the idea that there is scarcity coming into EVE Online again will constrict your production, constrict your mining and resourcing and harvesting in general, and that will raise the value and the price, if value and price are actually correlated, of items, and therefore you will have a different relationship with those items. They'll be more valuable. It'll be less desirable to lose them. Or it will be more desirable to take them away from somebody else, and that changes the overall behavior of all the players, not just the industrial players. And
we can already see in the war numbers, right? We haven't gotten onto that quite yet, but we can already see in wars and destruction that we have been in this long phase of where it wasn't meaningful, right? It's the whole already replaced, and it was for everyone. It's basically been Titans and Supers and Oracles are these consolation prizes, these end-level legendaries, but they don't play an actual part in the gameplay, right?
But by falling into that, you're kind of falling for what is the narratives of people. In other words, if a pirate kills you, he gets to laugh at you for killing you. But if you say, doesn't matter to me, I didn't feel that, I've got that replaced already, that's part of your defensive psychological warfare to say, like, you can't hurt me, I'm unhurtable because I have so many of these, I live in abundance, and what you just did and didn't account for much.
Yeah, it made PvP meaningless, right? And I know that's some blame me for being PvP centric, but there is really nothing fun if the game you're playing doesn't have any consequence, right? We're moving back into where there's consequence, and I do honestly believe this will be more fun for all players in EVE. Of course, the massive consequence might not necessarily be relevant in high sec because that's not really the point of high sec. The point of high sec is that it should be per capita less productive and less scalable, maybe.
Yeah, less scalable, less industrial, or just smaller scale, really.
So you have the risk versus reward thing when you then go and live in null and do the big time warfare. But even that had been stagnant for quite a while, where entities didn't really care. You need wars of this scale to even start caring, and I think that's saying something, right?
Well, you need to see that the war will actually happen. That's one component of it. A lot of people will go to war and it kind of fizzles because there's not a lot of participation. The reason we got excited about this war is it seemed that people actually cared about the results and were all in. And that's when you feel like, okay, something's actually going to happen. And that happened in 2018 when you saw the powers of Imperium go north and basically threaten the entire empire of, at the time, Guardians of the Galaxies, later called Dead Coalition. You saw real intent there to take them out because they were ratting and they were producing a lot of money. So the Imperium made a move on them to slow them down because that was their competition as far as making money. And so they went with the real intent of destroying them. And then you saw the real intent of the allies of Dead Coalition to defend them, Northern Coalition, Pandemic Legion, and other groups. And so then you saw like real intent for this war that happened. That was 2018. It was kind of like that whole summer was like a war of titans because there were so many titans being thrown around. And the reason that we were excited about that series of wars, we saw wars, battles that we have never seen, hadn't seen at that scale since like 2014. So that was a big, big year. 2 years later, we're here again, and we see the intent again of groups outside of the Imperium to attack it and destroy it. And we're taking that seriously, which is why we're excited about it. The trouble is, on the financial side of things, it hasn't happened yet because there's been a lot of running away, right? Let's face it, the initiative does not engage in fights they're not going to win, which is smart tactically. So they don't engage, they pull back. They only got surprised once and lost like 40 carriers. Not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. You've seen skirmishes back and forth, but everybody's using fast, small ships, which don't amount to much on the scoreboard as far as minerals and cost. But what we've seen now is the attacking forces have moved the concentration of their super capital fleet, which are big, which are expensive, into position to strike. They are moving up into Iridia. From there, they'll move through Fountain and down to Delve. And at that point, you're going to have all that weight of super capitals against all the weight of the Imperium in Delve colliding. So be prepared. The next 2 weeks, I think we're going to see some big standoffs that may end up in big fights.
Hopefully the prologue is done, right? I keep calling it prologue to war, and most have actually agreed, including the attacking forces. This is back to the many-phase war plan that Pappy has. But I just wanted to track back a little bit because I kind of feel semi-guilty of the whole Northern campaign thing, because I do remember when I was covering economic stuff back then, I was looking a lot at the massive goon numbers, but we did actually notice that I'm pretty sure the Guardians of the Galaxy Darkness did outperform goons in one metric, which was bounty and ISK printing per capita. When you looked at the numbers per capita, they were almost 3 times as efficient as Delve and the Imperium. And weirdly enough, some months after we had noticed that fact, that's when the attacks started. So it's almost like, oh no, we can't have competitors in the productivity and the crabbing, and they kind of removed them from the map, right?
Yeah, let me on ISK charts. Okay, let me clarify something so people don't misunderstand me. The only region that has changed hands in this fight, the only region, is Fountain, where the initiative lived, along with the Bastion, actually. That changed hands from the Imperium over to Pappy. That is fully Pappy control at the moment, with the exception of a few keep stars, which need to be taken, and that has proven not to be easy. Partially because of servers, but partially because some good tactics from the Imperium have prevented it from being easy. So I think it's fair to say that initiative withdrew from Fountain. Now, they didn't run away necessarily from fighting. I'm not saying you're not brave. I'm saying you're strategically smart to withdraw. You gave up the territory. That is a fact you cannot walk away from. And what's happened since then, when we look at all the battles, is that there's not anything registering on the monthly economic reports, which means there's a war going on, but nothing's getting killed. And that only happens when people don't collide in meaningful ways, which has happened. Only one fight have we seen where there's been meaningful loss of about 40 capitals from the initiative. And that was it. Everything else has been threatened or imposed power that has created behavior for people avoiding fights, meaningful fights I'm talking about, not skirmishes with T1 ships. And that's why it's not showing up on the charts.
And on the scale of productivity that we've had for the past 4 years, you really need to hit numbers that are a lot bigger than what we have. And of course, you can say, well, losing keep stars, but there's not enough keep stars that's been lost to make up for the productivity of both sides. This is why it's almost true when they say that the current income from TTT is covering both sides of the war, which is, well, tragic, really.
I mean, all nullsec fighters, F1 guys, right? Like myself, like everybody else, they say, yeah, we want to fight. But the people who decide to fight are not them. It's the fleet commanders. And the fleet commanders are especially good at this game. They know when to fight, when not to fight. They know when they can take something and lose and it won't matter because they gain a strategic objective, etc. So there's a lot of reasons to fight, a lot of reasons not to fight. But what we've seen is a lot of skirmishing and more or less tug of war, but very much on a T1 level. And I'm talking subcapital T1 level, not even battleships. We've only seen battleships happen on a Keepstar grid where a Keepstar is being destroyed that I'm aware of. And yeah, the Keepstars have been falling. I think 4 out of 6 have fallen. There's still 2 left. Again, it's not
used
easy.
A lot of battleship doctrines. It's the other side, which has only used battleships on Keepstar grids.
What side are you on, Gregorian, to be clear?
I'm on PanFam.
And let's just be clear. If you own some geography and it's getting attacked, you pull back to the fort. And that's what, well, it's Fortress Delve. It's not Fortress Fountain. Even though some people like to call it that because there was a slip up of narrative.
Well, slip up is
you
like,
pull back to your strategic
hold on a second.
Point,
it wasn't a slip up. It was a it was an adjustment, I think. Okay, I'm going to go quiet. You guys finish the talk. Go ahead.
It was actually corrected live when he said it. It was a slip up. No one in their right mind would call Fountain a fortress because it's never been that. So it would just be wrong. So if it was dumb spin. You pull back from the farms and fields and into your fort, and that's what they have done. And maybe there's been a few skirmishes out on the field with initiative, but mostly they were pretty much, I believe, ordered to come home and hunker down because this could be a big fight because there's a lot of attackers coming, like a lot. Let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah, go ahead and take it, guys. I have to actually...
yeah, it's fine. I was just leaving room for Gagarin.
Yeah, it did seem like they were trying to hold on to the Fountain at the beginning, but yeah, they did definitely pulled back pretty quickly.
Well, I think they started to count the attackers, right? First, they just thought it was, well, attackers are coming, and then it's like, okay, there's a lot of attackers coming. This is not realistic. You're not going to be able to hold it. You're going to be slaughtered if you stay there because it is a little bit. I'm going to do the big red boat thing here. It's a bit Agincourt thing. Don't get caught in the mud. Do not make that mistake because out there you can't do an effective warfare against forces like that. It's just not possible. They would have been massacred if they had stayed and tried to take the fight. So pulling back is the only choice. You can call it a little bit chicken, but that's what you do when there's that many attackers, right? So now they have to breach the fort and get into Delve proper, which is why we saw the staging and the move to towards Iridia with some of all the big toys, which are going to be the massive thing that is going to happen hopefully very soon, right? They have to punch through that door. This is the ram. And they need to get in there and get a bit of a foothold so they can actually start the war in Delve proper.
Comment from chat here, and it knew they couldn't hold PH. That's Pandemic Horde, Pandemic Legion, Northern Coalition. Staying in Fountain would have been suicide, and that is essentially correct. Yeah.
And also because let's not kid ourselves. I'm usually doing a little bit of goons playing on this, but Test, PH, PL, NC, they can actually fight. I might tease them a bit on occasion with that. I don't think that they're very good at some of the other aspects of the game. But when we're talking about fighting, they definitely know their thing, right? It's not a force you wanted to engage. Initiative are brave. Well, they're not brave, but they have guts, right? They like to fight, but you don't want to fight that outnumbered and that outclassed, because it would have been a bloodbath.
Should we go to another slide?
So just to maybe catch up on what Meryl was saying earlier. So we saw that move up, and all the big toys have been moved to Iridia, and I believe there's also a bit of rumbling and potential of punching through the back door in Quirius. So we have this almost, the major force looks like it's going to completely dedicate itself to punching through at the Iridia gate, because going through the Fountain Pearly gates might be a little bit risky, and not as good a strategic position to enter Delve. So they're going through the side door, and then you have the back door down in Quirius, which they might also punch in this 1-2 move to see where it's easier. I just think that they're doing the Trojan War thing of showing up in a massive force and just completely hammering on the Iridia door, and it's very likely they're going to break in eventually. It's just going to be how much is it going to cost? How much of a bloodbath is the Imperium going to demand before they need to pull back to a strategic point? Right now, we only saw it was said that it was supposed to be 1,000-man move up. I think 600 Titans made it there. And then there was a bit of a kerfuffle with fueling, because it was quite a big move up. So I heard that some actually ran out of fuel and hadn't stocked up enough.
What I heard was that they went home to defend a timer and then death cloned back to wherever they were on the move up.
Yeah, and Chad is pointing out that, oh my god, 600 Titan, lol, sarcasm. Well, this is not, as far as I can see, this is not a move up like that. This is like a smaller version. They're taking it in stages, right? I would expect something similar to be happening over the next days or weeks.
Yeah, they don't need to bring them all at once. They just need to bring enough that it's not a good idea to dreadbot them.
Exactly, and doing it in smaller steps also has the added benefit of maybe it can lure the Imperium to come out and engage them, right? Which might be a strategic interest, pulling them on the other side of the fence. Back to the Troy thing, come out where your arrows can't actually reach. It's pretty similar. They want them to come out and maybe engage on the actual planes, but they're not going to do that. That would be so stupid. Right now, they're sitting nice and comfortably behind the walls, waiting for the attempted breach.
So it sounds to me like what we've heard for the last 2 weeks is purely just setup and people moving pieces into place.
Yeah, and I know that some of the narrative has been, oh, we're winning on the Pappy side, but Willy has explained this. This is his phases. This is the stages up to war, and he's on record saying on more than one occasion that yes, this is just still prologue. We're still in the first steps. We're just prepping. We're moving up the war machines. We are creating our supply lines and all that stuff. And nothing is really the big war until someone bangs the gate of Delve, because all the goons, all the Imperium is on the other side.
What I find interesting is that one side didn't do this prep work before declaring war.
you'd be able to figure out what was going on. So there's no way to move that many supers without being noticed.
Exactly. It's not like you can secretly form that much on an attack like this. You're thinking smaller skirmishes and stuff. You can do that, but in this case, when you move material around like that, back to the MER, it actually shows up on the MER, right? When you move hardware from one region to another, it just pops up there, and it's not something you can keep secret. Hell, even the market people get that information.
They did get a lot of stuff into Rage way back when, but I suppose not that much stuff.
I just don't like the fact that it looks like this trickle in of the War Machine. I don't know what the point is to do it this slowly. I think it would be a bigger show of force to actually almost do it all at once, or at least do it a lot faster. I don't know if this is supposed to be a lure or assume that Goons and Imperium don't know what the actual capabilities are and the numbers of Super and Dread material is. I don't know. I'm a little confused, as I think some would have noticed that there was a lot of laughing from the Imperium side. Like, I don't know if it's the size matters argument, but it's like, oh, they're moving 600 Titans, lol. It's like, yeah, but I'm more surprised of why you're not moving all of them, or why did we not see the same thing the day after, or and so on and so forth, right? They need to get all that hardware down there. Otherwise, they're saving it for something else. I don't know. Oh, Chad is asking how many Titans Pappy has compared to Goons. I'm not entirely sure because the productivity in Delve proper has been crazy over the past years. So maybe they still have the numbers. Maybe it's 1.5 Titans for the Pappy sides for each Goon Titan, but still it needs to be piloted. And no one is in doubt that there's more pilots on the Pappy side right now. It's just that, well, Goons and the Imperium has been historically very good at these hell wars and rage pinging and bringing people online when they needed it. So I'm not sure entirely yet.
So you definitely think Pappy has more hardware in the back?
I think they have more bigger hardware, would be my guess, if anything. But if you're looking at smaller hardware and smaller productivity capabilities, so replacement stuff and supply lines, and raw materials and even raw ISK, I think Pappy are so behind. I know that there's this whole thing out there that Goons are poor. I've just spent quite a lot of years now looking at MERs and analyzing the economy and basically trying to figure out how much of Ares stuff was spin and how much was fact. Maybe there was a bit spin, but I don't think the spin factor is more than like 25% of the actual facts. So I think the war chests in Delve proper are massive. And then you get what I call the veteran effect, which is that quite a lot of very dedicated EVE players have stashes of their own, the private resources that Willie and I talked about a bit. And the point is that I don't think Willie remembers that when we're talking Goons, they are more willing to actually sacrifice themselves than maybe the allied forces. It's a bit like Russia. Like, well, these old veterans will just kamikaze themselves and sacrifice up to 90% of their wealth, and they're fine with that. And that wealth is usually considerable, where you could say that other veterans and elites in the Pappy forces in, say, PL and NC, they might not like to use their own stash. They're like, they like their big personal collections, and they're not going to give that away easily.
So you're basically saying that there's a lot of cushion there because some guys who may have dropped out of the game a while ago with huge assets will come back in for the war and deploy those assets without any further cost to the Imperium.
Yeah, and I compared to myself in my own Eve history. I don't mind losing stuff, and many of my veteran friends have pretty much lost almost all their wealth on several occasions throughout their history, right? To the point where it almost becomes a feature. We let ourselves completely get stomped and burn all our stuff every 2 or 3 years, and then we spend a year or two to rebuild it. And well, it's the starting over thing. We like that stuff. I don't know if the Pappy forces don't like that stuff. I suspect some of them actually do, because I do think that some of them are like classic Eve veterans. But I just get the feeling that they don't like losing wealth to the same extent that old school Eve players do.
I kind of like that idea that the Eve version of server reset is being stomped on the head.
Yeah, and this is very much one of the positive effects of this war. I don't know if that's at all the intention on the attacker side, but regardless, we're going to see a reshuffle and a reset of assets and wealth and all that shenanigan. And this is also why I said the realistic scenario of a win for Pappy would be to shed about 50 to 60% of the Imperium manpower, so to speak, right? But that still leaves the core of it alive. It's just a slimming down thing. I'm almost inclined to say this is like the get fit war, because everyone on the other side is going to potentially get more fit or have to get more fit to restart what EVE Online has become, because we're in a new ecosystem with scarcity being reintroduced, with some of the abundant stuff being killed, with the meta being a little bit stagnant, with Supers and Titans being in a place that's not really something that most players like. I think Imperium has repeatedly said, let's just delete Supers and Titans and get back to playing the game. I know that's hyperbole and exaggeration, but it's not entirely wrong. And I think many people feel like that. That's why it's so funny when you have these two types of players that are semi-new. It's maybe too offensive to call them summer children, but there is this whole entitled new breed of players that think that when they get their Titan, that's like the goal of the game. It's like end level, but we don't really have end level in EVE Online at all. It's not how it works. It's about building experience more than assets, right? So we need to get away from that. And the fact that the Super and Titan meta is stagnant just means let's burn it, right? This is why I like this war.
You're suggesting that owning a Titan is more like the old school version of, okay, now you have an idea of what this game is, you can go and play it.
Well, I'm almost inclined to compare this to what's it called, legendary or legacy equipment in World of Warcraft.
You mean heirloom equipment?
Yeah, sorry, heirloom. It's like, now I'm heirloom, now I'm elite. Yeah, so what? It doesn't matter.
No, heirlooms were something else. Artifacts and legendaries for different contexts in World of Warcraft.
The point is that they think that they've reached end level and that's the gear that you need to be part of end level game, but they don't field it, so it's completely meaningless. Because in World of Warcraft, you don't necessarily lose your stuff, but you do in EVE Online. So if you go to war with your end level gear, you're going to lose it, or it's very likely that you're going to lose it.
Someone will get shot anyway.
So we've just, in my opinion, I think we've been playing EVE wrong for the past 4 years, at least. It's something that started before the Casino Wars. But if we get back to playing EVE right on the other side of this war, it's going to be really good for everyone. I just hope that it doesn't benefit the Imperium too much, because I don't really want Imperium to roll over the rest of the universe again.
So, Caleb, most of the Imperium people you talk to are wealthy market and industry types, right?
I don't think you can simplify it like that. No, but I do talk to some veterans, but the majority of the very rich people I talk to are actually not goons. They're actually outside of goons. It's the old money before Goon had their gravy train and got filthy rich. Of course, there's many veterans in goons that have been rich all through their EVE history, and that's back to the veteran argument. But these are the people that built their wealth and their assets all the way back in the early first quarter of the game's history. But I think this is a bit to something that the Mittani said, and this is not because I'm just spinning his narrative, but he said something very interesting on the Meta Show recently. He said that historically, the only way to really kill big and dominant empires is to let them rot, and that is a historical fact. This is not when you reach a certain size and all the rest of the universe are not really able to make a dent. The only way to effectively kill it off is to let it rot. It's the whole Nero thing, right? Let them die in decadence and stupidity instead of trying to attack them. Because if you attack them, exactly what has happened recently is going to be reality. They're just going to wake up and figure out, oops, I'm a little bit fat. I can't fit in my armor. Maybe I need to slim a little bit and get fit so I can actually defend myself and kill these hordes, quote unquote. And that's exactly what's happening, right? Making new allies, friends, and stuff. Remembering gripping the sword, so to speak. It's the scene from Lord of the Rings. It's waking up someone that they should have left sleeping.
That encourages or would speed up the rot for next time, because you could always do it again the next time it comes around.
And I'm just pointing out that I think Pappy forgot that goons actually know how to play EVE, and they're kind of good at it, but they haven't been playing EVE for 4 years. They've been, I don't know, doing more something akin to fox hunting with their horns and running around killing someone that's not really a challenge to them.
Well, their EVE had changed completely into a more industrial, complex kind of management game, hadn't it?
Yeah, and this is the funny thing about CCP bringing in this abundance stuff, and I don't know if it was because they listened to some of the CSM lobbyists or whatever, or they had an idea that some of those arguments were valid. They might have been back then, but the way that they gave in pretty much created this weird game where you had these abundant things and no real incentives to war and PvP, and then they expected this to be a good thing, but then Goons and the Imperium just weaponized that and say, okay, we're not killing triangles anymore, or targets anymore. Now we're killing roids. Let's see how good we can get at that. And they just massively weaponized and put the OCD and all their tools into crabbing and making wealth instead of making war. And that was just not good for the game, because they have such a head start that I could be wrong, but my suspicion is that when we're talking wealth, they have 3 to 5 times as much wealth per capita compared to the outside forces.
Do you think there's a way to get them to burn through that wealth?
Yeah, we're seeing it. They're going to be burning through it, but I don't think that there's going to be enough effort to actually get them to burn it on a scale that's needed.
Yeah, I'd guess that it would burn through the wealth of the a lot more of the average line member whose ISK comes from mining and ratting, rather than the people who've been around for a while and built up the initial investment to get started on mining and industry.
But even their average line members have a huge amount of wealth, because I think I remember a while ago people saying that they joined them, mined for like a month, and were just had ludicrous amounts of cash available.
Well, okay, yes and no. Back to the fact that I said that they can cut down about 40% of their manpower without really taking any damage. That's because those are the line member people you might be talking about, the people that are not necessarily rich yet. But it is a fact that during this period of abundance, if you join goons, if you put in the effort, you got rich. That's just a fact. If you didn't put in the effort and just wanted to join fleets, that's fine. But you still had your SRP, so you never really felt the pain. I think this is McLeod's line, and I'm going to credit him for it. But I think it's something along the line of some goons only live SRP to SRP, which is actually a fact.
Okay, and so the question, I suppose, is going to be how many goons are on the breadline, for want of a better word?
Yeah, maybe 40%. But still, they have managed to amass a lot of NAV, like assets and personal, not necessarily wealth, because they are ISK poor. Because and many people that play the active PvP game are fundamentally always ISK poor, but they can't really lose things fast enough to kill their hanger floors. So they end up with accretion of wealth, even if they're living paycheck to paycheck.
So they probably have a fair number of ships to blow up before they run. And when they do run out, goons is really only going to be paying for 40% of their population for new stuff.
Yeah, and this is back to and if that so first if you tank the line members' wealth, then you tank the SRP chest, but that's not even personal wealth yet. That's not even the war chest. This is like what's called the war reserves in real life, right? Where you have these massive reserves of things like oil, and you can't touch them because they are basically safety. A buffer in case of war or geographical or when things get shaken up, or if like in the 70s the OPEC countries suddenly the Middle East starts doubling or tripling the price of oil. It's like, what do you do then? Well, you need to have a buffer to not see your economy completely collapse, and goons just have all this stuff because they've not had any use for any of these things, and the design that CCP have given us, there's just not enough sinks. Everyone always talks about ISK sinks and ISK faucets. It's not really the important thing. Just take something like ice. Anyone that's been mining ice over this period would not have any chance of actually using most of it. It's you can't burn it off. It's just stockpiling like up to the ceiling. It's crazy numbers.
That is very true.
Yeah, strategic reserves, Nick. Thank you. And I just think that in Delve proper, those reserves are crazy. And well, it will be healthy if we can burn through some of them, but I am not sure if it's realistic.
Did we get anything else interesting from the MR, the monthly report?
Well, there was the thing that Dunk insisted on linking when he talks about the trying to do the causation between market changes and the velocity of ISK. Basically, he's blaming CCP and not economic activity for the slump. But the trend line has been moving pretty much in the same direction over the past 2 years. So I don't think his argument is valid. I don't think that is the problem with the velocity of ISK. I think the problem with the velocity of ISK is there's no need to exchange goods and services if the economy is stagnant and dead. It's beneficial. It's almost like what I criticized Eve Echoes for. If there's no incentive to outsource and trade on the market. If it's better and more efficient to just internalize all your operations, then that's what people are going to do. And that means that market people don't have any work. The services they provide are worthless. So they're just going to stop trading or walk away. And this has been a trend because of the abundance economy, not just over the past 2 years, but over the past 5 or 6 years. The first canary in the coal mine that I saw was basically when Rita Jeter, which was a massively a big operator in arbitrage trade between the secondary and tertiary hubs, completely shut down his business and stopped playing Eve because there was just not the same margin or benefit from doing it. And then I've just seen that trend over the time. I myself suffered it when I closed my what's called MetaMarket project with my 1 trillion ISK mutual fund. If there's no profit to be had in trade and market stuff, there's no actors, there's no one that's going to be there. And we've seen the same with industrialists. We have lost, I would say, 2 industrialists for every 3 or 5 alt accounts that the huge industrialists have scaled. When they add more alts to their industry pipe, someone gets unemployed and they leave the game.
The huge alt stuff is why I've never really gotten into industry besides reactions.
Exactly. I used to do a lot of Tech 2 industry when that was still interesting and profitable. And I had actually prepared myself for getting back into that a bit while doing the investment stuff, because I was hoping that CCP would actually fix the moon stuff. But they did the opposite. So basically then all that industry also became very, very difficult to make profitable. And if you go and check many of the price developments on both Tech 1, Tech 2, and especially things like faction stuff, it just keeps depreciating. It loses value or it completely stagnates. That means that there's no incentive for anyone to actually play in that market and that play style.
So it's a self-sufficiency problem.
Yes, and this is whether you're scaling operations up in industry, in markets, in logistics, any of these things, as long as you give the player base the ability to just add another account to what they already have, someone will have to leave the game.
Is that an argument for us to only be permitted to have 1 account each?
No, that's not a solution. That's what I keep calling a hard stop. It's really bad to do that. Put the design in space, make sure that it is more efficient to work with another player than do things yourself. As long as it's internalized and self-sufficiency based, you're going to lose players. It's why I call it the cannibalizing model. CCP are losing real players to alt accounts. So their revenue might be the same or even go up. But the more they do that, eventually they're going to reach a point where people won't play this game.
So mechanics-wise, how do you distinguish between an alt account and a real player?
In what way?
Well, I mean, effectively from the computer's point of view, for want of a better description, it can't tell whether it's an alt account or a player. So what are they going to have to do in terms of game mechanics in order to make players versus alt accounts more effective?
Well, one thing would be to get rid of the big mistakes, which is infinite spawning anomalies, raw calls, and SP farming and infinite slots, which is actually 4. But those are some of the really big ones. But there's just so many of these things that they've done over the past 6 years. And I can understand the argument for making things a little bit easier. It's a bit like in other games with travel points and respawn location and all that stuff. And yes, if I'm playing this games, if I'm playing games like that solo, then sure, I'd get frustrated if I have to run across the entire map to get back to the quest that I'm doing. But if it's a multiplayer game, these bottlenecks are required. Oh, and Dunk is just pointing out to me, and he is right. Scarcity has failed to create conflict. That is completely true, because just adding scarcity flat across the board does not really change the board, and it does not create any incentive. There are still no incentives to go and attack your competitor. So without competition, without differences in skill sets, in groups, in geography, and all that stuff, there's still going to be zero incentive for wars and conflict. It's the argument that I'm trying to make often to the miners. If I reduce your mining capacity and mining ISK or volume per time unit by 50%, and the market price goes up by 100%, then the effect is zero. It needs to be differentiated to have any meaningful impact. If you just flatten everyone equally, you're just flattening the whole game. You haven't made any change that creates drama, volatility, competition, and emergent gameplay.
So they need to create places where limited number of people can control a region for a specific reason.
Well, they need to give room for speciality. If you dedicate yourself to doing a very specific chore, you should get to a point where you're so good at it that you outcompete what I would call the casuals, or someone that just injects and adds another multi-account thing. This is why historically, way back, CCP tolerated what would be considered differences or almost monopolies and someone getting ahead. But they've had this consolation prize attitude recently where they don't like the class thing, that there's different skill levels and different classes in EVE. So they almost seem like they want to redistribute everything down to the bottom. It's just not going to work. It's almost going to destroy more of the gameplay, because one of the things that we play this for is the simulation and the fact that in real life, abundance and equal distribution and luxury for all would be amazing. I just don't want it in EVE.
If everyone gets to be on top, no one's on top.
Exactly. They just need to make it so that if you want to be on those tops, it needs to have enough strain, bottlenecks, points of failure, so competition can get in there and topple you over or challenge you. And then you will have either someone will then start collaborating and colluding, or they will start fighting. This is very much why I'm such a fan of TTT, because it's comprised of participants in there that are usually enemies, but they have just started colluding, right? So if there's no strain on that, if it's too easy mode to hold that monopoly or that cartel, then, well, it won't create content. It's just going to keep on ticking as usual. And if CCP do add some changes, you will see TTT, or at least the collusion of TTT, fall.
What kind of changes do you think would cause that?
Well, this brings on one of the topics that I've just been poked with. CCP recently realized some of these things, and they started really doing some good stuff. And one of the things on the board of things to add volatility into the game in a way that isn't oppressive is things like biomes, climate, seasons, and weather. CCP Rise did this presentation at EVE Vegas, and he talked about weather effects, and we got these recently. We have now, well, it's actually quite fast if you think about it. It's been 4 to 6 weeks since they announced that they were going to bring these things in and gave us all the information in the dev blocks, and they have already put them out there live on the server. And these storms, they're meaningful enough for people to actually start getting mad about it. And anyone that actually followed it will have seen that there's a lot of raging on Reddit and elsewhere, and that's good. When something makes some people mad, that's because it has a meaningful effect, but it's still on a scale where it's not oppressive, right? We have 8 systems in total, 4 types, 2 of each. We only have the 4 of them out now. We're supposed to get 4 more. And these effects are basically changing the local environment, so you have to adapt to it. You can, of course, ignore it at your own risk, and that will completely nerf your normal activity. And then again, there's a nerf, so there's a downside to all of these storm effects, but there's also an upside, and this is what makes it exciting, that you always get this bonus if the weather system hits you for a specific type of gameplay. I do think that these numbers are a little bit too binary. It's like either or. It's like all fleet fights impossible, or now this is only an exploration system, or no cloak. I think it needs to be a little bit more granular to actually be fun to engage with. But this is just test phase 1. So we're going to see CCP figure out, okay, which numbers were right, which were wrong, and how can we tweak this to make it better. So this is just enough quality added to the game to make some people a little bit annoyed and some people a little bit excited. And I'm very excited about the second phases to this stuff, which is biomes, so ecosystems, local differences, seasonality, things like that. Basically, Rise had all of them on his presentation.
So with the biomes area, you're saying that things are going to get so different in different regions that people are going to be fighting to own all regions, or
trade, or raid. They have to do something, and this is back to, we used to have very specific ore types in different parts of Empire space, right? There was like these nice posters that showed the whole thing with Umber and whatnot, and the higher ends, and basically you were heavy on one type of mineral in one area of space and low in another. That differentiation created what is called balance of payment, because you had to exchange with your neighbors or go and kill them and steal it, right? So you just had a more dynamic development, and I think what I'm seeing is that is kind of what they want to bring back, because it created that dynamic of interdependency. Many of the things that we had in the past, people can say I'm just a dumb nostalgic, and to some extent they are actually completely correct. But when it comes to macroeconomics, I will insist that I am not wrong. This is really about rolling back to some of those things will get us back to the positive effects we had back then. There was a lot of things that were completely broken, but those aspects actually worked. You need to have a reason to engage from high sec to null sec, from null sec to worm space, from worm space to low sec. All of these things need to have some unique aspects that makes it important for everyone else to, if not directly, then indirectly engage with them. And this is what I see the economy team and CCP Red Party is trying to figure out. Which parts from the past do we bring back? Which ones do we leave in the past and completely ignore? But there's just been so many of these good things back then. I also hope they take a look at things like industry teams again, because I think it was a good idea. It was just a bad design.
Dunk Dinkle just said that there are no stockpiles.
Well, okay, there's no stockpiles and goons are poor. It's fine. I'm wrong, but there is massive stockpiles. He's back on the scarcity does not encourage conflict. Well, not if it's equal scarcity. If everyone is poor or living from day to day, no, there's no conflict or dominance or class or roles or anything like that. But when it is granular and differentiated, there is actually reason for conflict. This is why when you have these situations, that is when you also see these things like collusion happen, right? Because monopolies and oligopolies and control is something that players want. The point is that CCP, just like in real life, should not support that. They should make the game design so it's something that can be broken up. And again, because I should not really be doing the soapbox thing, but back to the weather and climate. The interesting thing about that is that it is a nudging of player behavior, and it's not something you can easily calculate. You can't do a spreadsheet that will work under all conditions, right? Because when you have these things moving around, players will not be able to do what they do on an everyday thing. They have to figure out, okay, today is not a mining day, I have to do something else. So they will shift their behavior, and that is going to be healthy for the entire game, because it's like shaking the ant farm, so the ant starts doing something again. And then you will see EVE players figuring out how this can bring about emergent gameplay. And we've talked about things like storm chasing and figuring out how to live under the storms and basically take advantage of weather effects, right? I think we're going to see that. And I know that there's also a lot of things on the table of how to revitalize wormhole space. And we're going to have a show on that next weekend, where Tiberius is going to do his wormhole mysteries show.
I like that idea that effectively you won't be able to min-max because you don't know what's going to be available to you on a given day.
Let's get this straight. I am not against min-maxing on principle. I actually like it. I think it's a massive feature of all gaming that you optimize and do things the best, most efficient way possible. The problem is if it's the same min-maxing everywhere, right? If everyone min-maxes according to the same spreadsheets, if the same spreadsheet works all over EVE, then figuring out the game is going to be almost instantly. When CCP does a change, it's going to take 2 to 3 days for all of the game to adapt to that new normal. I want those differences to be added to the game so that my spreadsheet does not work for Dunk Dinkle, and Dunk Dinkle's spreadsheet does not work in 1DQ. Every spreadsheet needs to be different, and this is also some of the things that's aged really poorly in EVE. If you take something like Blueprints, right? The whole thing with Blueprints and Blueprints Originals, all the numbers on that and the whole design was not made to last 18 years. It was maybe made to last about 3 to 5 years, right? But CCP did not think that this game would end up being this old. And this is maybe one of the aspects of the game that really needs a revamp, because maybe it needs to bleed off efficiency. So you have to like reset it or refresh it to still have them being useful. And the granularity on things like ME and PE and what types of minerals are used, maybe that needs to be shaken up as well. Because right now you have old prints being massively dominant in the game. To anyone that lost that whole thing, basically the production of most industry when it's Tech 1 based comes from prints that have been researched years and years ago. So getting into that market is not efficient. You can't really effectively compete, and those things just make the veterans dominant. And this is, again, I'm shooting my own face. I'm not an ever nerfer. On the contrary, I want CCP to fix the things that make my class massively dominate the game and able to do the cannibalizing thing. They're basically just still cannibalizing on people like me. That, okay, Caleb, if you add 5 accounts and give us that Plex, it's fine that you kill off 2 new players. It's just not a good game design.
Yeah, I think that the system of researching blueprint efficiency is probably one of the biggest barriers to getting people into industry, and one of the things keeping it just established people with lots of accounts.
Yeah, and you can see this in how massively optimized the production of these things have become. And it was supposed to be the other way around if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Take One production was not supposed to be dominated by the old guys with multiple accounts. On the contrary, it was supposed to be something that was always outsourced to little guys and new guys because you wanted to go where there was more profit. That's just not what we're seeing because there's a fundamental game design flaw that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, the blueprint issue is why the only industry I've done is reactions and faction stuff like Triglavian ships that hasn't had a BPO. And
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm not the only one.
And you see this in capital stuff as well. And it's also why you end up with a situation where the game, you can call it, well, it is stagnates to a point where you see other things start breaking, like the insurance system, right? The fact that we started getting insurance scams, which is basically players deliberately building something just to destroy it, and this is only possible really on something like Take One because it has this massive infinite scalability. You can just brute force this on crazy levels. So we started seeing this maybe with smaller hulls. Then we started seeing the battleship insurance thing where everyone was killing battleships to get the ISK instead. It went to the point where I saw this as completely broken when they started doing it with carriers in Dell, right? It's just, these are your canaries, right? This is like, okay, this is a symptom. Something is broken if this is possible. And no one really reacted to it from CCP. And if anyone joined chat or voice chat recently that would like to shift the topic a little bit, I would be very happy.
I had to sit there and listen to all that, Caleb. I wanted to challenge you.
I think Matterall is back, but he's muted himself.
Yeah, it's Muterall again.
Just to answer, short, yes, there's enough time to fix this, and I do believe that Rattati and his team is actually working on it very hard.
All right. Well, thank you for holding church. Now let's see if we have any more news out there. No, it was good. It was a nice discussion. Thank you for actually holding up the show the entire time by yourself, pretty much. A little help from Gregorian and Rags there. Is that Rags?
Well, just in my self-defense, just like with everything else in EVE, like the soft changes or Titan stuff, if we don't keep repeating it, CCP is going to assume that it's working, right? So I will repeat this, and I do think that it's an important discussion because it's been ignored for a while.
Okay, let's take a look at a bit more news. So, what are the big takeaways from this MER that we found? Besides the high sec mining is increased, Delve, I think also the war hasn't started, right? At least on the economic reports, it doesn't seem to be registering yet. I think this is also true for groups like Fraternity. I keep pointing to them. They're in a low grade war. This is not a hot war. Same with probably AOM and other peripheral groups that are big. They haven't really felt this yet. The only group is maybe,
and it ties into all the stuff that we've been covering this week, right? This is why I'm so excited about this war, because the Niaja thing, the high-sec structures, the cartel, the shift of hub dominance, maybe from Jita to maybe at least to some extent Dodixie, the whole fact of that means market shares of economic power is going to shift around and shuffle. And it's all tied back into the Null War too. So there's so much drama happening, and we're in a prologue that really sets the stage for a potentially really, really dramatic winter.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, Fraternity and AOM are loosely participating, but they're more preparing to fight each other when it's done.
And then you also saw the Provi fall, which is, well, of course, Provi always falls a little bit, right? And there's always weird shenanigans going on down there. But it's still a huge shift at a time where everything is changing.
Yeah, I was surprised to see it had a significant amount of net exports, but I was expecting some more net exports.
Are you thinking Provi?
Yeah, for Provi, because they're an old group that probably has a lot of stuff in their structures.
Yeah, well, I think you will see Provi become a little bit of an interesting player down in the whole MR scene and how that develops. But right now they're in a similar situation to whenever things get shaken up, you always get this period of pause where nothing is really happening or getting consolidated yet. I think Rocket and Friends just finished with the Sov chain shift down there, right? So now they're figuring out how are we going to run this house.
okay. So, yeah, do we figure out MER? Is there anything else to talk about in the MER there?
Not anything really meaningful yet, because we kind of have to wait for those important proper war numbers like logins and activity and especially destruction numbers. That's kind of what we need to wait for, right?
Yeah, I think that the drop in mining and ratting in Imperium space is hitting. That's probably hitting the average guy a lot harder than, since it's still really high in production and trade, which require a huge amount of ISK to really get into. But the average guy who's recently started playing when the war happened hasn't built enough to get invested in it, and is probably just mining and ratting to possibly get into that.
I mean, the big thing that stood out to me in the MER was the absolutely insane ratting numbers that are coming out of Branch and Cobalt Edge. Cobalt Edge has some real people, but Branch absolutely has almost nobody, and they're putting up numbers that are comparable to like entire no block, like farming.
Yeah, and an
That is
important
bot
side effect.
central up there.
Yeah, and this is a side effect, right? This is a very good period for CCP to bring the security stuff. I don't think that's materialized in the latest security report, but I do think that it's going to materialize in the next security report.
I'm still waiting for Veni Vidi Vici to just get like their alliance wallet nuked, because quite frankly, it's been a long time coming. And I'm surprised Azure Citizen hasn't gone the way of Fraternity. What was the old
Azure
Fraternity
Citizen
renting alliance?
Tell me about Azure Citizen. How are they related to?
I mean,
VVV?
so Frat's old rental alliance, I forget what it was called. It was like Frat Citizens? No. But whatever it was called, that alliance got neg walleted down like trillion-esque, which basically means that any money coming in just goes to paying off the negative value, as opposed to dealing with actually making money again. So they just dropped that alliance altogether and made Azure Citizen as their new rental alliance. And so all the frat renters up in Branch are under Azure Citizen.
Okay.
There's like
you think their wallet's going to get nuked? Why?
Because when CCP finds that the vast majority or a large portion of the ISK coming through a certain tax base is from botting, they neg wallet them.
So you think they're botting, and it's about time they got dealt with? Is essentially what you're saying.
I can name 2 real groups that live in Branch, and they each live in like maybe a constellation and a half, and neither of them are very big. And they're ratting more than the entirety of Esoteria, or like even some of the more active places in the drone lands, which are quite free to rat in right now.
But there is also the effect of this war where everyone's eyes are on Delve and everyone's focus is on Delve, that
Well, not
there is the
everyone, but-
opportunity to sneak out and be massively more
Well-
crabbing than you would, right? Hey, Killer.
Not everyone. Sorry, I heard like a moo. Was that Killer B?
Yeah, I said hello, but
Oh.
okay, so it cut off a bit.
Yeah, it's okay.
My
We're talking about corralling these chatters, treating them like livestock, and that's nothing. So I
wait,
heard
who are we treating like livestock?
chat, the people in chat.
Oh,
Anyway, we're just adjusting our moderation so it's not too harsh, so it's just right. Anyway,
Yeah,
you were
that makes
saying,
sense.
how's it going? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah, just stuff.
Are
Alright.
the toys getting ready?
The
I mean, right now they're sitting in the middle of nowhere in low sec, but they're definitely getting closer to being ready, I guess.
what's the idea of bringing super capitals into the northern area now? Is there some clear
Northern area? Question mark?
Iridia fountain maybe on the way down to Delve? Like, what's the purpose?
Oh, over there. Well,
Mhm.
basically, it connects, like this keeps a chain. It's connecting Fountain and it's basically connecting both theaters with the Keepstar chain, so we can technically move supers freely between the two, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is nice. Keepstar chain is obviously not complete yet, but once it's completed, we can jump Keepstar only from one side of the map to the other, very conveniently.
Yeah,
The other thing is where their supers are staged right now in FAT, those supers can't actually engage PanFam because they'd have to go through Regional Gate. If they want to actually use their supers for something that matters, they need to put them through Connet or Iridia into Quirius and Delve.
So it's more like this. It's a very useful logistic route for the future, and I thought it was a bit too much personally. Like when we discussed this, I was like, why drop Keepstars everywhere? We could just drop Fortizars, but we were like, we then talked a bit about and we decided not to lowball it because yes, Fortizars would probably be enough, but the convenience of just being able to jump from one side of the map to the other with just Keepstar, you're perfectly safe. You can dock on every mid. You can,
Mhm.
like it's just a lot more safe and a lot more convenient for everybody involved. It obviously costs us a bit more money than the alternative, but that's whatever.
Well, it makes a little more sense in that people can travel in smaller groups without having to be all on the same.
Yeah, exactly. There's basically no danger at all right now, right? There's no fishing groups that can set up in the middle and interfere or something like that. It doesn't exist with the Keepstar chain. You can just go all the way, basically. So yeah, it's a pretty convenient chain. We'll see where we end up going and what we can end up doing. Obviously, we're still not done with Fountain, so we still got Fountain to go. 2 more Keepstars.
Mhm.
Hopefully, the next one without a crash, and then we should be fine.
Yeah.
We were winning that time. We were doing.
Yeah, we talked to you right after it ended, and you're like,
Yeah,
hey, it happens, but oh man, I'm mad. I could
that
tell.
was like. I wasn't actually too mad myself. It's just like because it kind of connects to the thing. Like I had a talk where Caleb was there, where I had like a rant about CCP and the way the game works, and it was a long rant.
Hmm.
But basically, that's one of those cases where that rant would come into effect, where basically, it's just like no amount of screeching is going to do anything. Like they know it was a problem, and I was actually really surprised by CCP's. I don't know the right word for this, but they were really sorry, and it seemed like they really wanted to work on it and see if they can find something that they can do about it, so it doesn't happen again like that. It will happen again. Like no, we don't. Nobody has any illusions about the server not crashing. Like the server will probably crash a couple more times during this war. There's just nothing that we can like just by the sheer amount of players involved and the assets that everybody's going to be fielding.
Mhm.
But that's fine. It's something we can plan around. We just, and in a really big fight, we do plan around it. We were just not planning around it this time because we didn't expect it to crash this early on. We expected it to, take a bit more than just 2,700 people and 2 smart bombing fleets to kill the server. But
Well,
like
to
I
be
said,
fair, I mean, I didn't see a particular fight, but I'm assuming you guys did have your typical carrier fleet there, right?
Yeah,
I mean, pretty much one of the biggest things you saw in any of the prior big fights, like especially
yeah,
Real
fighters, blah blah. Like that.
Real
I
was doing fine until people
yes,
launched fighters and then
yeah,
it
but
died.
that see
So
again, like
you're
none of
hurting
that
yourself
should be
there.
none of that should be a factor. It's not the player's responsibility not to crash the server. It's the company's responsibility for the server not to crash. And we plan around, or we play around the possibility that the server might crash, but we don't adjust our strategies in the fight, especially in a meta where smart bombing battleship fleets are so strong. We're not going to say like, oh, we're not going to bring a smart bombing battleship fleet this time because it might crash the server. We're not going to say, oh, we're not going to bring our carriers this time because it might crash the server. That is something that happened in X47, where I was the Super Cap FC for the North, and then Jay Amazing, this was the Super Cap FC for Imperium, and I comboed him right before the fight, and I said, look, how about we both just keep our super carriers out to make the server not eat shit, and we can actually fight this out because supers are irrelevant anyways. Can we just leave our supers out and just go Titans versus Titans? And he agreed to it. He said, Eric, if you don't jump your supers in, we won't. We ended up jumping them in anyways for other reasons, but basically that was the only time we ever actually had some communication going on between the two sides agreeing not to do something because it could, just alter the outcome of the fight.
Did you warn him you were going to jump him in, or did you just jump him in?
No, I mean, I didn't have to, right? Like, as soon as he saw us dropping, he knew, okay, I was just going to drop mine as well. Like, I told him as well when we talked about it. I said, like, look, I'm not planning on jumping to them, but you know how it goes sometimes. If we have to, we will. And then he said, yeah, whatever. If I see you drop yours, we'll just drop ours. And that's what ended up happening, right? We ended up dropping ours, and then they dropped theirs in response, which was fine.
Yeah. And you didn't reach numbers where you were expecting this to be an issue, right, Killer?
Exactly. Like, that's the main thing. If this was like a big fight where we knew it was going to be 4 or 5K people, then maybe we'd think like, oh, do we really need carriers? Or maybe we'd think, oh, do we really want to bring smart bombing fleets? But we saw everybody's hype for this timer. We saw what we were going to form roughly. We knew what they were going to form roughly. We didn't expect to have to work around it this early in terms of number wise, right? Like, we didn't expect the server to go down in that particular fight, but again, it's fine. CCP did seem really, really concerned about it internally after the fight. We talked to them quite intensely, and it really felt like, yeah, they're going to look into it, see if there's anything maybe that caused an extra issue except just the tighter end leg itself.
So you're pretty happy with their response?
Yeah. It's, I was a bit worried that they don't really give a shit. They were like, oh yeah, it's just it happens. But at least from the part of the teams that I talked to, it seemed like they were concerned about that happening more often, and they wanted to look into it. So hopefully that will happen, right? And then hopefully we can do better next time.
Well, from a CCP perspective, this is not just important. This is massively important, because this is the situation where people like Killer, and these wars bring so much marketing value. You definitely want to actually have servers that can be able to break our record and get all that news coverage and get that spillover to EVE Echoes. This is really a financial thing. CCP is not just interested in fixing this. It is almost vital that they fix this.
Yeah, we'll see what they can do about it, right? Like, at the end of the day, it was a nasty combination of 2 smart bomb runs pretty close to each other, and server probably hadn't recovered from my fleet getting smart bombed, and then after that, the Dejectos getting smart bombed right after that. It's just
I think we were watching your monitor ship under attack, and then it went down. Maybe
because we got smart bombed my Ferox fleet, and then I warped my Feroxes off, and I was obviously tackled, so I stayed behind, and then our Macario fleet came in on the Jackdaws and wiped them, and then the server just
Yeah, NC has got some pretty good smart bomb runs recently on.
Why have smart bombs become such a desired weapon these days?
Well, because if you have the right numbers, the right ships, it is a very effective weapon, especially these keeps the timers to just wipe out a fleet entirely. Because we're looking at them versus mutants, it wouldn't really work, right? But versus in the meta that we're having on the keep stuff fights at the moment, where both sides just bring maximum amount of Feroxes and T1 shit, right? they're just incredibly strong. Like the Goon Praxises, for example, if they have enough of them, they can kill Feroxes with those. They can kill the Ravens with those. They can kill Rocks with those. Because all of these, the Ravens and the Rocks are super sniper fit, which means they're not designed to tank. They have almost no tank in the mid, so they're very vulnerable to getting smart bombed. Jackdaw fleets can get smart bombed quite easily. Ferox fleets, if you have a lot of smart bombing battleships, will die too. So there's just it's a very smart bomb friendly meta where you can do a lot of damage with a good smart bomb run. So that's why they're being used so much at the moment. We've been using Chemo since the start of the war, and we've been using we haven't used the Mech Heralds in a while. One of our he's called Servanda. He's the CEO of LFT, which is a very old NC Corp, a German one.
Yeah,
and he started running these smart bombing Mecharials like back in like 2016, and the reason he's using Mecharials is because they have a faster warp speed and they land on stuff faster, right?
Yeah.
But then obviously Chemos became a meta, and then the Mecharials kind of stopped being very prominent. But now versus what we're currently facing, the BS are just better due to the bigger range of the smart bombs, basically, because the model is bigger, the ship model is bigger. So we're bringing the Mecharials back, and yeah.
I like that guy Servanda. He's one of my favorite FCs in NC Dot.
Well, he whelped like every possible move up he could whelp, but he's a good guy. Yeah,
I like him.
He's really, really smart, and he.
I liked him before that, but yeah. He must be slipping. No, but that's he's great. I really liked being in his fleets.
Yeah, he's a really smart guy, and he's a very valuable to the FC team as well because of the IT work he does in the background. Our fleet tracking tool has been coded by him, basically. In NC Dot, we don't use PAPs like some other alliances do, where people have to click a link to be tracked, their participation. But we run it through the FC's API instead. So basically, if I open a fleet, I have my API and our track tool, and then the tool will track everybody joining the fleet and what ships they're in and yada yada. So we basically put the fleet participation tracking on the top end, not on the line member having to click a link, basically.
Yeah, that's kind of how Horde does it, except Horde, the FC has to manually put it in.
The honk. It has to do the honk, right? So yeah, it's cool, and he did that. So he's a useful guy.
What's the honk? I've heard that. What's the Horde honk about?
It's just like we just mentioned. It's their participation thing, right? Like at the end of a fleet, the FC will track their participation, and everybody in the Horde fleet starts spamming honk in fleet, and it's called honking or whatever. And it's also because based on the participation, based on how many honks you've been on, your corp gets points, and then each corp, like the best corp with the most honks at the end of the month, gets I don't know, something.
Plex.
Well, there you go, some plex. So yeah, basically it's basically like a participation and rewarding system for Horde internally. It's pretty fun. So whenever I run Horde fleets, I obviously can't honk Horde fleets because I don't have the roles on their services. So like every time I run a Horde fleet, then the members at the end of the fleet, they will start like screeching at me. It's like, "Oh, killer, we need to get honked." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I have to find somebody in Horde who can honk them, and it's always very funny.
Oh my God, all of them are the same, right? Where's my PAPs? Where's my honk? Like,
yeah, exactly. Which is why we don't do that in NC, because honestly, like we find it very annoying, most of us. So we just basically made it so it automatically tracks participation through the FC. Yeah, we also don't tie SRP and Corp money payouts. So, for example, the way it works for Goons, obviously, is that Corps get money based on the amount of PAPs they like have per Corp or something like that. So for them, it has an entirely different purpose as well, not just tracking participation, but also the way they structure like their Corp payouts or whatever. However that works, I'm not entirely sure, but that's how I understood it. And we don't do anything like that in NC anyways, right?
Yeah, I'm looking here.
Our cops don't get shit.
Goonie DuPont says NC preferred docking instead. Where did NC get a reputation for being docked?
I don't know. I honestly, I don't know when that meme started on entire, because it's probably before my time in NC Dot, but it's just because NC Dock makes sense, right?
I thought because of the command to dock up faction supers.
No.
No.
That was before, that meme existed before that.
Yeah, it did. But that
doesn't work.
I never figured out why. I guess it's just docked. Yeah, you're right. NC
yeah, it's just dock, right? Like it's very close to one another. It's easy.
NC docked. Yeah.
Yeah, it's whatever. That's like a very old meme, but it still comes up, right? Sometimes, so it's kind of funny. But yeah, overall, like I thought it was pretty interesting to see the reaction to everybody in Pappy after the KVN crash, because some people were not necessarily the line members, but some people like the middle management or whatever you want to call it, were like really concerned and were like really demoralized. And I went like into the room and I was like, why are you guys crying? Like, we won, like we were winning that fight. All that happened is the server crash. Like all we got to do is do it again and it'll die, right? Like, that's really all there is to it.
I heard
So
I heard the server was unstable from the beginning. It wasn't just that it grew unstable. Like I had heard there were disconnects even before everybody was there.
server, I said this the other day as well. Like I said this after the actual fight when I was here. The server has been shit since the start of the war. It has nothing to do with that like single event. It has been like I said this again, I'm just repeating myself at this point, but at the start of the war, we were gating through Fountain with like 150 dudes. There was nothing else going on except our 150 dudes gating through Fountain, and we were sitting in like 20% tie in almost every system. It is nothing new. Like the server performance has been garbage for the last like couple of weeks at least. Like I obviously only started noticing it at the start of the war because before that was kind of inactive. But like ever since I started being active again, I noticed that the server performance wasn't very good. So it wasn't like it wasn't surprising.
It seems like
it's over a long time, right? Yeah. It's something that has been added over the past 6 months or maybe even 12 months have made the servers behave weirdly. Of course, we then had the DDoS thing that made us maybe not pay attention to it, but it had been really strange. People have been reporting lag where there shouldn't definitely be lag. People have had login issues where it's like, but is there DDoS? No, it's just being dumb. So there's like many of these small reports that when you pile them up, show that something has gone wrong in the code. There's something in there, and it really can't be the hardware, right? Because I believe that they just upgraded some of that with like $3 million worth.
Yeah, no, it's never the hardware. Like that's my main issue with CCP in terms of server performances. They're like, something's bad, and then like every 2 or 3 years we get a post saying, oh, we just bought another 30 million worth of hardware. It's the top-notch hardware now. I believe that their hardware is top-notch, but these issues don't have anything to do with their hardware. It's just stupid code. Because it's like 20 fucking years old, and nobody knows what the code actually is anymore because all the dudes that coded it originally have left. So it's you know, it's just a pile of them.
And it's also quality assurance stuff, right? You remember when one of the graphics dude had changed the effects on missiles, and there was a mistake with it. So if that had actually gone live, it would have completely lagged out the service because it was designed and coded wrong. So he had to fix it. But luckily it was caught because people actually went to CC and tested it out on a mass test. But this is the kind of stuff we have not had. Much of the code that we've seen being added over the past 12 months have not necessarily been tested in the wild. So they haven't had the chance to see if these things make mess. And the amount of mess that they've made is too small to go on their radar to actually care about it. But now there's a massive incentive for them, because if this war has the potential of being as interesting and dramatic as the last war, we're talking about a situation like last time Killer was in one of those massive big ones. There was 12,000 viewers on Twitch. Think about that. 12,000 viewers.
Yeah, but there was 10,000 people in that fight. So the majority were people in that fight sitting around tie-dye watching it on TV instead.
To be fair, it didn't matter though, because it put Eve in the top 10 of Twitch at the time, which just makes people click the game anyways. So it's worth it.
It's not like it's not like people heard, oh, there's a huge fight going on in Eve, let's go check it out. That's the ideal, but that didn't happen. It's 10,000 people in that fight, 12,000 people watching it on Twitch. There's like
characters, right? Like it's
characters.
Something you got to remember.
That's true. Characters.
Like 10,000 characters in a fight translates to maybe, and it wasn't 10,000 either, by the way. It was like 5,000 something. I was like, it was probably like 9,000 characters total that were like logged in and ready to go.
No, it's actually over 10,000 according to CCP. Aussie said it. Over 10,000 waiting to get in. Only 6,000 made it into that one system.
Okay. Yeah, so
Anyway.
usually so for example, the other day when we had, and this is just for NC, I don't know how it is for other alliances, but when we formed up for some of the Keepstar kill timers, we had like 800 NC dot characters or 700 NC dot characters logged in, and I think on Mumble we had like 300 people, right? So it's roughly the rate you could think of, at least in terms of NC, and I know it's really similar for PL as well. So 800 characters translate into about 300 real people.
Mhm.
You can just say 2 to 1, basically, which is still massive. If 10,000 characters means 5,000 people, it's
That's
still
a
a lot
lot.
of fucking people.
Yeah, that's a city. That's
Yeah.
a small town. That's a city.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with Caleb. I think that if this keeps happening and it actually does affect, like if the server performance actually ends up affecting the war in any way, the headlines that CCP probably wants to get are big war going on in EVE, yada yada, and instead they're gonna get server performance of EVE Online stops war, some shit like that, and
Wow, that would be terrible.
it is something that they really do not want to happen, right? So I'm hoping that it won't get to that point, but
Well, I mean, you could
We'll make
spin
it
it
happen.
as you can spin it as so many people are fighting each other, and only
yeah,
one.
but it's
game
never
can
good.
attempt
Like
it.
no matter how you spin it, they're never gonna come out in a great light. It's like, oh look,
Mhm.
this amount of people wanted to have a war in our game. It's so unique, but they couldn't because the servers kept
Look at-
crashing.
Yeah, look at
Like,
all the
that's just not gonna work.
look at how many people we disappointed. You're right.
Yeah, pretty much.
And this is
Nice.
also
Like-
why my state of mind right now is we're not even at the point where this is a really good story and good war yet, right? So this whole thing about who's winning and who's not winning, it's not really there yet. Like, can we get to the point where it's like just amazing to watch the
I think
war?
expectations are too high as well. Like I don't think it'll get to that. Like the pace it's currently going at, even once we start moving into Delph and everything, like it's not gonna like. It's just war. And to be fair, like some of the stories which are going to come to light when the dust is, when all this is over and the dust is settled, are already pretty good because, some of the planning for this started happening a lot sooner than most people will realize. And some of the stuff that happened in the last year was like all kind of tying into this, not because it was planned like that, but just because the way it happened.
Mhm.
So it was, there's some good stories to tell already doing all of this. It's just people like, there's a completely different environment to World War B now. Like around World War B, there was a couple major factors that mattered a lot, right? Like there was way much stuff happening on Reddit in terms of good propaganda. There was like good videos being produced and released on a daily. There was really, there was just a lot of great propaganda almost every day. CCP, I felt like, was working a lot more with us back then as well, because during the entirety of World War B, I was in very close communication with CCP Loki, who does the scope videos, and I was, we were producing scope videos together and stuff like that, so that there would be scope videos about the actual in-game war by players, not just about some Triglavian whatever, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was great. We had the leaders actually being represented on the actual
on the scope,
narrative.
yeah,
that
exactly,
was
right.
amazing.
So all these things that were going on, there was like CCP was reaching out during World War B. We're asking who are the main people in charge of the two wars, because they wanted to put us in touch with gaming press and everything. So CCP worked a lot with us to make the war what it was as well in terms of publicity, and none of that is happening right now. Like literally none of it. I don't know if they don't care. I don't know if they don't have the time for it, or if I don't know what it is, but it is different. So I feel like people keep saying, well, this isn't really a war yet, right? Like everybody's kind of like waiting for this to become what World War B may have been, but it may not ever get to that point, right? It may just keep on creeping on like this, and it'll like, that's what it's going to be. And at the end of the day, there's going to be some result, and everybody's going to, that was kind of not epic. I was missing all of that stuff. So I'm a bit cautious. I'm a bit cautious in terms of it. Like, is it ever going to evolve into something that people are going to get super excited about? Our people are super excited.
It must, because it seems like the stakes are going up now that you have some.
Yeah, but everybody that is involved is already super excited. Goons are going crazy. Like they have fireside chats, the hype that they have internally. And it's the same for us. Like everybody in NC is super excited. Everybody in test is super excited. Like everybody involved in either of the two sides is super excited. So I don't really know what more people want. Like,
no, it's the
somebody make a great YouTube video, I guess. But
Yeah,
like,
well,
I think you nailed it, right? It's like, when is CCP going to be as excited about this? Because this is actually their bottom line. right? They will be making potentially a lot of money if this war can outscale World War B1. That would be very good for their revenue stream, right? Because they also have that secondary thing with Eve Echoes. So it's like, why are they not doing the things that Killer is pointing out? Why are they not engaging with us, with the media, with creating scope videos, with actually doing coverage? And there's just so much potential to outperform the last war, but we can't really do that without CCP, and especially when their servers aren't actually working. That's really
It's the little
bad.
things as well, right? It's the little things as well. Like I remember in World War B, there was on the official EVE Online Twitter, there was like, which side are you fighting for? Money Badger Coalition or the Imperium? That kind of stuff. Like now, the latest tweet I saw was like, "Oh, Niaja has fallen," and yeah, that's not irrelevant. Like that can be a big deal. Niaja falling is something that it was like the one thing I said I would care about if this trick invasion stuff, because I really didn't care about the trick invasions at all. And I was like, yeah, if Niaja would fall, that would be a big deal because they would like change logistics to the south entirely. So that was like one thing that I thought mattered. Except, by the way, it is literally just one more mid for jump freighters. It sucks for freighters and regular logistics, but for everybody just running jump freighters, it's like one more midpoint. So it's not really that big of a deal. But still, it was like the most relevant system to fall so far with the whole trick stuff. And they care so much about all that trick content, which is fine because that's their baby. That's what they're pushing at the moment so hard, and I think they should care about that. But the fact that they just ignore one of the largest, huge conflict going on in the game at the moment is just so disappointing for the people involved as well. Like I had a lot of fun working together with CCP and making all those videos and doing that. It was a lot of fun for me, and I felt like the game developers, they cared. But now, like, there has been zero communication between CCP and us, except when the server crashed.
But to be fair to them, they kind of got burnt by caring, right? Like. They were
a little bit. There was the whole collusion narrative. You remember that?
Because they thought they were like, right? Yeah, but that was because, and that's not their fault. Like, it's CCP tried reaching out to both sides, but one side wasn't really willing to work with them a lot because they were on the losing end or something, right? And our side was obviously hyped to work with them because we were winning. So I was just giving them everything they wanted, whereas the other side just wasn't giving them anything because it wasn't, it wasn't their narrative. Yeah, that's not CCP's fault if one side that's losing is not willing to communicate.
Well, and more to the point, I think the butthurt more than the fact that they were losing were maybe the whole thing with the casino money had not been discussed and it was being kind of ignored at that period of time, right? Because there was no clear decision yet of where CCP were going to move with the rules of things like gambling. So
CCP was loving it. Like at least the people I talked to within CCP during the whole, they were like, "Oh, this is such a cool story. The fact the casinos bankrolling this war, blah blah blah." Like they didn't know. They didn't like. Obviously, the devs did make that decision, right? But like at the end of the day, there was so many people that thought it was a cool story. And towards the end of it would be, I was at a barbecue in Sweden, unironically, lol, a barbecue. I was at a barbecue in Sweden, and it was just mostly ISK bankers, a couple dudes from PL, and then there was 2 CCP devs who were in Sweden at the time on vacation, and we just asked them to come by. We just said like, "Hey, you guys want to come by?"
I saw that picture.
Yeah, so they came by to that barbecue and they were just hanging out with us, and we talked to them about, because they were asking us like, so how much you got? Like, we were talking about the money that the casino makes and how much money we actually had, and we told them like, oh, we were thinking of buying up all the Plex and Jita and putting into our own Citadel and stuff like. And they got really nervous about it. It was like, oh, please don't do that. You can do whatever you want with any of the other like stuff, like modules and stuff, but the problem is when somebody starts buying up all the Plex there is, then they have to use their own Plex that they like confiscate and stuff to control the Plex market, because it's there can't be no Plex on the market, right? It doesn't work because of the way that the real money transfers and the service they want to offer to the players on how they can like buy their game time with in-game money, basically. And at the time, there was no Plex Vault or whatever, right? Like, so yeah, I feel like we may have done some damage to ourselves there. Though to be fair, I think the casinos got banned like 1 week after that barbecue. So
why did you do damage to yourself? Because you invited devs to that barbecue and that got out?
Well, I mean, I don't know if they talked to anyone about it because those 2 devs didn't really seem to care all that much. But yeah, I mean, they did notice.
In the middle of a
war.
Was
basically a bit of investigation stuff, right? They would have gotten some of the numbers and with the discussion with you guys. And then when that got back to head office, it must have been decided this is actually a little bit of a problem and broken, even though it creates amazing content, and it did. So it was worth it. I think the whole narrative back then was worth it for both sides. It was a good war, and it was a massive event in EVE history. And this is what I just want
think it was a good war.
to happen again, right? On a new scale. I just wanted to ask Killer one question about my little tinfoil that I'm not alone with. The JITA before Christmas, if that whole Triglavian thing happens, that's going to potentially happen while the war is still on. What do you think that's going to mean?
What? The JITA before Christmas?
Well, the whole invasion thing with shaking up HiSec. Some of us are speculating that there will be some sort of event that is the final event, and it's most likely going to be a trig invasion of JITA, and something is going to be shaken up and changed. But it might actually mean that business as normal is not going to be possible for, I don't know, a while after that event in JITA 4.4. So what do you think about something like that happening potentially in the middle of a war?
Well, no, neither side relies on JITA at the moment. I can tell you, the amount of Feroxes we've had to build and get sourced in a recent 2 or 3 weeks. We were I think I bought we built/bought 1,500 Feroxes in the last 3 weeks, and 200 of those came out of JITA. So we're set up in a way that we don't need JITA at the moment, at least for Pappy. I don't know. I'm sure for Goons it's the same. But obviously, that would be insane. I think, I maybe yes, it would be great. Honestly, that was one of my main complaints about this whole trig invasion thing, was that I didn't think it mattered enough. But if there was actually going to be a trig invasion in JITA, then yeah, that would be a huge deal, and I would love it. It would be great. I don't think it would have much effect on the war. Maybe it will end the fighting for a couple of days when we go to shoot HiSec people. But
if anything, it'll bring down the amount of jump freighters that get killed coming out of JITA.
That's true, but again, it's similar to the Niaja thing that was looking to be a proper proxy war. But if something like an invasion in JITA or something,
it wasn't though. Oh man, the whole Niaja. I understand why the Imperium did it, but Niaja was never going to be again. It doesn't. The whole Niaja thing does not do as much damage to the legacy logistics as Imperium claims. Yes, it makes it a little bit of a pain in the ass because they have to go. They have to basically start JFing straight from JITA instead of JFing from Amar. But again, that's 1 or 2 more mids for a jump freighter. That's not the end of the world. That's adding 2 Cynols to your Cyno route. That's it, right? So the whole narrative of this is a huge hit to our opponents is just bullshit. But that's just the way. That's fine. It was a very good opportunity for the Imperium to claim some narrative, to go there and participate on the side of the Triglavians, and then go say, "Hey, look, we did this right." It makes sense.
It was a great story and a great little news piece, right? But as Killer said, it's true. It doesn't really matter. But that was also the conclusion almost before they even went. It's why are we doing this? This doesn't really matter. But it matters in the drama and the fact that this is a proxy war light that they could that we could all spin into a story on win or lose, or who says the right thing and who lies. It was good content, and it's cool to see that there is something PvE centric that matters in the game. I think that is the most amazing thing about that story.
The 2 major JF pilots I knew from test always just jumped straight to JITA anyway. And this is somewhat speculative, but if I recall correctly, I think Brave's HiSec division is staged in Southern Lowsec, or not Southern Lowsec, Southern HiSec. So for those HiSec guys, which are technically under Brave, they probably were not super enthused about JITA getting cut off.
Yeah, exactly. There's obviously some people that are affected by it, but I don't think it matters in the grand scheme of the war. And JITA falling wouldn't mean either.
I don't see why Brave was pinging about it in particular.
Yeah,
that would be so baller if they would because let's be real, if there's a trig invasion in JITA is going to fall 100%, no matter what, just because people wanted to cause havoc. Everybody's going to join the trig side anyways. So. And, fuck Edencom forces at that point, because everybody's just going to roll in there with their 200-man Ferox fleets and start, making JITA fall. But yeah, I mean, that would be so baller. but I don't know if they're going to do it, to be honest. Like, I'm a bit skeptical when it comes to that.
But it would be a
'Cause Jita
great
is,
story, like a massively great story.
It's so funny as well in Echoes, right? Because technically, the way that the trading system setup is set up in Echoes, technically Jita isn't as important as it is. But just because Jita is the main trading hub in Eve, everybody just started piling into Jita immediately, straight like anyways. So now Jita has become the main trading hub in Echoes as well. One of the two, actually. There's 2 trading hubs at this point because Jita is always full. So the system 2 jumps from Jita. That also has an interstellar trading station, has also established itself as a trade hub. It's pretty funny. But yeah, like,
It's habitual thinking, and it's similar to what happened on Serenity, right? It's not that
Yeah.
it wasn't organically something that developed. It was pretty much, oh, this is how it looks on TQ. We're just going to mirror it, or almost copy paste to the other server in behavior.
It's pretty funny. I've been playing more Echoes in the last couple of days than I've been Relief. I'm not gonna lie, because I was really busy with some projects for work, and I basically told Nidasbar, I was like, "Yo, dude, I can't do any. Like, I can do fleets, but I can't do any major planning for this next 2 weeks because I have a lot of finals and a lot of other projects I need to finish." And so I just been while I been doing that, I've been playing Echoes. And
I think that's so cool if you think about it, right? Because when we started talking about Echoes and we saw some of the demos and some people were in beta and there was a lot of poo-pooing about it. And
it's a lot better than it was, in my opinion. Like, I played it in beta and I thought it was shit, and I've been playing it now since the release day, and I'm loving it. I'm not
It's
gonna
just
lie.
so cool that all the Eve players that we talk to right now are just playing it and testing it out, and you were telling us how you were actually playing it while in tie-dye, which is just such a big it's almost like free marketing. The fact that the Eve players actually like this. They don't like if you compare it directly to Eve because that's just stupid, but it's a really entertaining game that we all enjoy playing with a little bit while on the potty or while in tie-dye.
Well, not a little bit. Like, honestly, like, unironically, in the last 3 days, I probably have 30 hours in Echoes.
Wow.
I'm not playing it a little bit. I'm playing it pretty hardcore. I have 3 accounts in Echoes already, and
Oh, man.
it's pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. Luckily, there's no skill injectors in Echoes, because I would have, I probably would be down 500 euros at this point if there was skill injectors. I'm not gonna lie.
You completely caught the bug.
Yeah, I'm a victim. No, so I'm generally a victim to mobile game and microtransactions, which is why I'm trying to stay away from them, because I'm very susceptible to it. Like, I'm the kind of guy. Luckily, now I'm in a position where I can afford it. Where a couple years ago, I had no money at all, and whenever I started playing some game that had microtransactions, I was pretty, screwed, because I would, the last couple of pennies I had, I would just dump into some mobile game, and it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
But
yeah.
the microtransaction, or rather the monetization scheme of Echoes, Jintan was covering it on his review video. They're not like the traditional, almost toxic monetization that you usually see on mobile platforms. It's not like you can just go nuts and buy loot boxes or crates and things like that. It's pretty much Eve with maybe a little bit more, right?
Well, I think if you want to be somewhat competitive, you have to buy Omega. And that the fact that Omega is $40.99, I thought was pretty steep, because it's more than actual EVE Online Omega. Yes, you can buy it with Plex, and at the moment Plex prices are super tiny. You can, for 500 Plex, you can get the best Omega there is, right? And 500 Plex is, right now Plex is at 30,000, so 500 Plex would be 1.5 million, which, that's no big deal. Actually, that's 15 million, my bad. 50 million is still no big deal, at least if you know how to make money. So that's whatever. To put that in comparison, a Caracal at the moment is 20 million, right? And 1 month worth of Omega is 15 million. So
that's cheap. And you're saying you're actually already multi-boxing, at least when you're on your battle station, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, if I'm doing stuff in Eve as well, then I'm not. But I'm multi-boxing in Echoes. I have 3 accounts at the moment.
So you almost have one for each device. You have one for the phone, one for the tablet, and one for the emulator, and then you can play Eve as well.
I don't even have Echoes on my phone. I only play it on my computer, because I do not believe in mobile games actually being played on the mobile. because who would want to stare on their phone screen for like, several hours, and it with like controlling the stuff with your finger, it just doesn't seem right. So I just play on my computer with an emulator, and yeah, it's working very well.
Well,
Obviously,
on
it's convenient that I can, like, when I'm like away from home, I can like log in to my industry account and I can just put some new ships in the build, for example. That's cool. It's very convenient, and I can do my PI while I'm on a mobile. But all the actual playing, all the PvP I do, I just do that on my computer.
but people are saying that it's really nice on tablets. Actually, it's a little bit.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. I do not have a tablet, so I wouldn't know. I only have a computer and a phone.
Put it on your buy list, Killer. You as you said, you can afford it now. Get one of those. It looks really good on tablets. We just went out and bought one to be able to play it.
I don't. So the thing is, I have my private laptop, and then I also have a company laptop. So I have enough devices that I carry around whenever I go where, because I like usually carry around both my laptops, and then I carry around my phone. So I wouldn't want to add a tablet. I actually did think about getting a Surface, but I scrapped that idea because they're super fucking expensive, and
Yeah, they are.
And,
but I was looking at
yeah.
the Yoga, and yeah, those hybrid things are just so cool, but they're still a little bit too steep.
Yeah, because some of my colleagues have the Surfaces or the iPad Pros or whatever. It's basically the same, and it's what they do with them. Once you really get them down, they're like really convenient, and they do basically all their work on them, and it looks really convenient because all they carry around is like this one thing, right? Like their Surface and their like Surface bag or whatever. It's like this tiny bit. When I always have a big backpack with like 2 laptops in it and shit. So I was like, man, maybe I should get one of those and then just have this tiny thing to carry around instead of like multiple devices. But yeah.
I'm curious about how many people are actually going to invest in something like a Surface or a tablet because of a game like Echoes, because I think it's actually a considerable number. I don't think we're alone in this on saying, okay, this is too small on a mobile phone. I don't want to necessarily run an emulator because then I can't carry it around, which is one of the main features of Echoes, that you can play it wherever. So I think a lot of tablets are going to get.
You can still
sold
play
by
it
this.
wherever, like even if you run it on an emulator.
You can
Yeah,
log,
yeah,
log in with
Yeah,
your account.
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, I can so I play it on my computer with an emulator, but it's the same account that I log into when I log in from my phone. So it's the same thing. It's I could play one account on my phone, one account on my emulator. It's the same. Like it doesn't make a difference. But yeah, it's fine. Like I'm not gonna buy a tablet over it.
So if CCP
cool.
decided to actually expand on the whole tablet thing and put some features of EVE Online on tablet, would that also interest you, Killer?
No, I mean that depends. We've been asking for PI to be like PI. I actually think that the way they did PI in Echoes is the way that PI should be in EVE, because honestly, it was like when I was a new player, I thought it was pretty cool the way that PI worked, because you could like actually see the buildings to a degree. You could like set up your own planet, and it would feel like you would actually be building a colony. But now that I know, it's just a chore. Like no people that do PI, they set up their like 80 planets or whatever, and then they have to maintain them, and it's kind of a pain in the ass. And I think the way that the PI works in Echoes is something like there's a lot of features in Echoes that I think this should be in EVE, not the other way around.
I agree.
What it is.
But I think one of the things is that when choosing these game designs, they need to be more either or. They can't. If you want to go AFK gameplay like PI, you should go all the way and make it a little bit more like in Echoes. But if you wanted to make something engaging where it's actually got gameplay and needs you to be online, then it's the direction that they should dedicate to, right?
Yeah, but
They
here's
need
the
to
thing,
make a
right?
choice.
I don't think that they're ever going to divert enough resources into PI, into reworking the way PI works, that it would justify an actual active gameplay. Everybody that's doing it now is already doing it the most AFK way possible. So they may as well just make it fully AFK, for example, in PI. Because nobody that does PI at the moment, literally nobody's like, I do PI because I enjoy building these colonies so much. Like the active part of the PI in the game at the moment is so bad, like so annoying, that it's not the reason you do it. Right, and that's the thing. Like, if they would actually rework the way PI works, like entirely, then yeah, maybe, because it would be like an active part of the gameplay or whatever. But right now, may as well just make it fully passive and be done with it, because literally that's all PI at the moment is being used for anyways.
I just think that there's a huge opportunity to do something similar to SimCity or Tropico or something like that with the PI feature, because
There's huge opportunities in almost every corner of the game of EVE Online, but it's just they just don't have the manpower for it, right? Like that's the problem. There's huge. They like SOF, right? Like we all, like everybody, including
my God.
CCP, agrees that the current SOF system is not very good. But simply the amount of resources that would be necessary to rework the SOF system again is so huge that they simply can't do it at the moment, right? Like everybody, including Fozzy, you know, when at the last summit I was at, we talked about SOF system a bit, and he said like at this point everybody realizes that it's not very good. It's not working the way we intended it to work. Everybody agrees, and they want to rework it, but they just can't because they don't have the resources for it at the moment. At least that was my last like.
But are they moving halfway
point.
towards that with what is it, the ESS thing, that they're making it a permanent feature instead? So it's going to always be in the systems, which is almost like a stepstone towards the admin hub that was on the structure planning thing, right? That was supposed to take a role in next stages of SOF. So they're rolling out something that I see or feel like it's like step one in a like 4-phase plan, just to keep on the whole phase plan stuff.
Yeah, honestly, like anything. Obviously, you'd have to read the details of the changes they actually propose to SOF, but there's so much room for improvement in the SOF system at the moment. I think that you know, all these kind of changes sound kind of cool.
Well,
I always like the idea of, you know, being in your space, and there's so many things that like I thought that would be cool. Like, for example, like one of the things that I thought, you know, one of the fixes I thought were kind of cool when it comes to jump bridges or jump gates at the moment, because obviously they're completely overpowered. I thought that, you know, the further you get away from your capital with your jump gates, the more fatigue they give you or something like that, or the less often you can use them and stuff like that. There's so many things. And it's just one like really, you know, little idea. There's so many great ideas that people think of.
Fuel cost, not fatigue. Fatigue dumb. Fuel cost.
Yeah, or fuel, but honestly, like fuel cost doesn't work if the fuel is liquid ozone or Stronto, whatever, because everybody has infinite of that. It would have to be some significant sort of cost.
Yeah, and again, you're completely right, but to tank some of those stockpiles that is now available when it comes to fuel stuff, they need to figure out how to.
I mean, all they gotta do is do what they did to fucking regular ore. They just gotta completely remove it from the game, and then the ore will get scarce enough soon enough. Like what they did to the mining is, you know, that's obviously nothing permanent, at least not what it sounded like to me. It's just like, yeah, we're gonna do this, wait until all the stockpiles are dried up, and then we're gonna find like an actual solution. And I mean, to be fair, the numbers that you see now on the MER, I think look way healthier than what they were, you know, a year ago, when there was like 14 trillion ISK mined in Delph.
Oh yeah.
And that just doesn't seem very healthy. And then I feel like the numbers you see now, where the top regions are actually high sec regions again, waha. And then, you know, the numbers are not like 10 trillions. It's like, you know, 2 trillion in the forge or something. And then, so I think that's a lot more healthy for the game in general. And we'll see if 0-0 gets some ore back or not. But at the end of the day, I actually like that about the current situation. It's also another layer that's been added to the war in a way, because you know, a couple of months ago, a year ago, everybody just, you know, would have continued to throw Feroxes at each other infinitely, because it was like, yeah, Ferox is whatever, right? You have infinite ore anyways. But now even Feroxes can become a problem when you just throw hundreds of them away over and over and over again. It can become an issue, and that's kind of cool. Like the fact that not having resources is actually a problem is very refreshing, because that just didn't exist for a long time. There was a couple of years ago, for the last couple of years basically, there was just infinite everything, and it was kind of boring because you lost something, you just didn't care because you knew you could replace it within, you know, a second. And now that actually becomes an issue, that's pretty nice. It's pretty fun to play around.
Killer, how does the map look when this war is over? Just your personal opinion. Where are we going? What is the actual EVE Online, say, come summer next year when this is done?
So we're winning, of course, right? So that means Delph is empty, Fountain's already empty. None of us are gonna move in there, not for a long time, I don't think. So like Delph is gonna be empty, Fountain's gonna be empty, which I'm sure somebody will move into. And then we'll see. It's hard. Like I personally, I don't think we want to stay allied to all the people we're allied to right now. So maybe some conflict will happen after it. We'll see what happens.
Because that one is
Yeah.
obvious, right? There is a huge potential of some sort of conflict arising on the other side, especially if you win, right? Then how is things going to be consolidated and all the
If we lose, we all know what's going to happen, right? Test is next. So, yeah. If we lose, then Test's going to get rolled by goons and then we'll see what happens after that. But honestly, I genuinely don't believe that we're like. I don't want to say that we could lose. Yes, we can definitely lose, but it's not because we don't have the numbers or we don't have. We are at the moment we are the stronger coalition in terms of everything, like numbers and all that stuff, but that's not. That's not what makes us vulnerable. And goons have already figured out what the weakness of Pappy is, and it's the relations between the alliances that are part of the coalition, and that's what their narrative is going towards them. I mean, every single show you see anyone from the Imperium go to, all they do is say, how shit Tappy has been doing and how Tappy has been doing none of the work, and the PanFam did all of the work, and it's clearly them trying to sort of get that narrative into our line members' heads, where our line members start complaining and be like, oh, we've been doing all this work, we've been grinding Fountain, and we accomplished all of this, and Tappy has done nothing, right? That's obviously what they want to achieve. And at the moment, it's not working, but I'm not saying it's never going to work, right? It could definitely work at some point. I think that's the strongest. I think Goons are actually playing that very well at the moment as well. Like that's their best strategy for defense. Is not trying to actually defend their space military-wise, because I don't think they can sustain it. I think their best bet is to try to break up the coalition attacking them, and we'll see if they succeed or not. At the moment, I don't think they will, but obviously things can change very quickly.
Yeah. And that's really gameplay that won't really come out until like at least 2 or 3 months into the future, right? The whole cracking and the psyop and trying to peel off groups or create internal conflict. This is also a relevant thing for the Imperium, right? Because there's also potentials for some sort of peeling off and cracking. Because again, they also have line members. They also have summer children. They also will have potential losses and drama that could evolve. Not entirely sure where it's going to evolve, but it's definitely the counterplay that we always see in EVE wars, right?
Yep. So we'll see how things develop. It's going to be very interesting to see. Either way, I think we'll have some nice big fight. Honestly, like these fights over those keep stars, while they were kind of annoying in terms of tight ends and so forth, I thought they were cool because they were actual big fights that both sides sort of brought a lot of people to, and it was over a keep star, so it felt like it mattered. And yeah, I thought that was pretty cool overall. It was I enjoyed them to a degree. Obviously, the actual fighting was pretty cancerous, but everything surrounding them, and that was pretty nice. Now we just got to do it again without the server crashing, and then we're Gucci. We can finally claim that Fountain's complete and go on to the next.
We were talking about smart bombs earlier with the server crash. Has anyone seen those people who are dropping smart bombing redeemers in Delph?
Yep. That's us. Partially.
Yeah, that's that
makes sense. It's jump. It's a pipe bomb with a jump drive, right? You don't have to Titan bridge. You cannot Titan bridge in the Delph at the moment, so it makes sense. And it works because they travel a lot with Intis to these Keepstar timers. Oh.
Just very expensive.
I would just like to say that I am very happy for the drama and narrative that's being brought to EVE Online from the Pappy side, and the fact that we are having a real war. It's just too bad that we kind of got cock blocked a little bit by the server crash. So I'm just going to ask Killer, when are you going to be in Delve? When can I announce that the war is now on?
Nobody knows that. I don't know that. Nobody will know until we know how things go. It's kind of
Best
questions
scenario.
that you're never going to get an answer to, by the way. I don't particularly like them because they're impossible to answer. Giving, like I think about a week or 2 weeks ago, I said it's going to take us 7 to 10 days to finish Fountain, and I said that assuming, the level of defense that Kuhns put into these Keepstars stays the same as we saw for the first 3. Obviously, that changed, right? They put a lot more effort into the Southern Keepstars than they did for the Northern Fountain one, which makes sense. So now I can't tell you when we're done. That depends on how the next Keepstar timers and Fountain are going to go. We're not going to leave these Keepstars alive. We're going to kill them, and it may take us another week. It may take us another 2 weeks. We'll see.
It's just
We're not gonna go until they're dead.
Well, you were so theoretically spot on, but there were factors that you could not have expected, and I think we may have been delayed with this whole process another week or 2. But does that mean that we're not going to see you in Delve until like potentially a month or 2 into the future? Is that the timeline?
I think as soon as Fountain's wrapped up, then we're gonna move. Into Delve. I don't know. I don't think you can go straight for Delve. I think I think after this, you're gonna see most of the fighting happening in Quarius for a time, and then I think it's gonna move from Quarius into Delve, right? So. But yeah, I think that as soon as the keeps are dead, we're going to move on fairly soon because nobody likes sitting on their hands and doing nothing for a longer period of time. And as soon as the 2 Keepstars are dead, we're pretty much done with all the forts, Sotios, and all that other stuff in Fountain. So as soon as those 2 Keepstars are dead, there's literally nothing for us to do in Fountain, and then we're going to have to move on, and we'll see where that's going to be. Maybe it's going to be Quarius, maybe we'll go straight for Delve. I don't know. I don't think we can make that decision until we know what's the deal with the Fountain stuff.
It's a Monty Hall 3 doors thing. Are you going to go for the main door in Fountain? Going to go for the Quarius one or the Iridia one? Pick a door, or are you going to pick 2?
That's the thing. Like we plan these stuff week by week. Like I told this Marrow a couple of times. Like we have a weekly meeting with the coalition leadership, and we decide basically what we want to achieve the next week, and then. At the meeting the week after that, we sit down and we're like, did we achieve all the goals we had for last week? And the answer is either yes, and we move on, or the answer is no, and then we have to look at, finishing what we had set up for last week, or do we want to skip it, or that kind of that's how we work through this. I don't think there's any other way to work through this either. Anyone claim, and I keep saying this as well, and I'm a very strong believer in this. Anyone claiming and be like, yeah, this is exactly there is no Darth Sidious in EVE Online. That just doesn't exist. You can say, yeah, we're going to plan to kill goons within the next year, but you're not going to plan every single step carefully like Darth Sidious did so geniusly through, the Clone Wars and everything, where everything was his plan and everything that happened was according to how it went. That doesn't exist unless you have a strong connection to the dark side of the Force, apparently.
I think we call that Bob, don't we?
Yeah, but... Yeah.
So Muller is still the Dark Sidious. He's just never showing his face.
Yeah, that that was probably before my time, or I don't think I cared enough back. But yeah, people kept saying an NC dot as well as oh, Molly may come back if this and that. I was like, who the fuck? I know who Molly is, right? But I was like, okay, so what's that gonna do? Is he gonna bring 100 people with him, or I guess I don't have enough appreciation for the old guard or something. Maybe I'm just I'm a young guy that doesn't appreciate the old stories, but whatever. I just still don't know.
You're not young anymore, Killer. You are now middle-aged in EVE terms. But when it comes to the whole Sith Lord thing and the secret people in the background, I'd just like to know if you have any comments on, do you think we're going to see Sword Dragon show his face at all, or is he going to completely ignore everything?
That is a good question, man. I mean, yeah, I'm sure Sword Dragon, like 2 years from now, when Sword Dragon decides to place the game again, he's probably going to claim he orchestrated all of this. But I don't know. I honestly don't know.
So you don't
I
think
thought
he's
that,
gonna
like,
play it?
after what happened to his coalition and his alliance, all I know, like, as far as I know, he decided to take a break, focus on his family, you know, that kind of stuff, which I think is important. And maybe he's going to free up and then he's going to show his face again. But right now, his corp, I think, is an initiative for mercenaries. So I'm not sure how much influence he can have from, you know, in it renter corp.
So you don't think
Or
he's
feeder
gonna
corp.
make it into the game while the war is still on?
It could be. I mean, I
I
don't
see.
know. How the fuck am I supposed to know?
Well, of course you don't know. It's just that I'm comparing this with all the other phases that I'm not going to say I wrote them off, but they were not very active, right? People like Laz, people like Grath, people like yourself, right, had kind of turned up a little bit and weren't really doing much, but of course still always paying attention to what was happening in EVE Online.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I knew or felt that okay, this war is actually on when I saw you being very active again, because that's one of those canaries in a coal mine or rats to keep an eye on, right? Because when they start moving out of the city, something is about to happen. And when you came back, when Last came back, when Grath shifted uniforms, like how did that happen? That's when I knew this could actually become interesting and dramatic. And I'm just thinking, where's Sword? He's usually in there somewhere.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, he will have to make a comeback for this to be a proper EVE war. Not false. I would agree with that. It's wild, man. Like, honestly, it's pretty interesting to see who shows up where and, you know, what they do and all that kind of stuff. And sorry, I was just one of my corp mates in Echoes just ordered a ship off me and just go like, yeah, can I buy one of you right now? The ship is like pretty hard to build at the moment because it requires a lot of minerals, and I guess I'm gonna have to explain it. It's not that simple.
We're gonna have to get some proper coverage of the EVE Echo stuff, and
My
figure
corp's
out
doing
that-
great. Like, dude, we were doing great. We just paid off our debt like 2 or 3 days ago. Now we can
Good.
actually rent a corp office.
Because
all
it's
that
a
stuff.
secondary story, right? We can, when you start giving us those nice tie-dye fights that last for several hours, then it's just something to do on the coverage in between. So you can tell us, well, we might be winning this fight, but in EVE Echoes, we're actually losing right now, or things like that. It's EVE while you EVE.
Well, Echo starts having tie-dye, which they've confirmed they will implement in the first expansion.
And also bringing stuff with the next one and stuff. So that's why I said not to move my corp in 0-0 yet, because I want to see what stuff is going to be like and what citadels are going to be like first, before I decide to go. At the moment, we're just staging in Lowsec around Tribute, basically in Tazy, and it's doing great for us. But obviously, you know, Tribute's still pretty empty. So if the soft system turns out to be great and it's worth it, then we'll probably move into Tribute and see how it goes from there.
No,
It's not going to be fuzzy.
Killer, you have to go and
obviously it won't
take
be.
Delve in Echoes. You have to go and take Delve 1DQ so you can actually.
Delve's already
poke out
occupied
the-
by one of the larger coalitions in Echoes,
it.
one of the larger alliances, so it's not going to happen. They have a ridiculous, like I'm on their Discord, and they have pretty insane organization.
What coalition is it?
I don't know their name.
So I thought goons were in Delver, at least that's what.
Yeah, they're called Goon Swarm something. They're a Goon Federation Army or something like that. They definitely have Goon in the name. But they have they already have an alliance set up, sort of. There's alliances in this game. It's pretty expensive to form one, and for now I didn't really have to because my corpse. We don't have to form an alliance yet, but may become necessary. Who knows?
So are you playing with some of the same people in EVE Echoes that you play with in EVE Online, or are they completely?
So
Right.
I'm on a channel in the EVE Online Discord, the EVE Reddit Discord or whatever. There's a channel called EVE Doi, which is basically a whole bunch of Germans from EVE Online, and we actually have a semi-active community in there, which is kind of funny because the entire EVE Reddit Discord is pretty cancer. But that channel is pretty cool. And when Echoes released, I just pinged that channel. I was like, yeah, who was down to play Echoes? And then we formed a corp with the Germans in that channel. And so basically, yes, some of the people are. So there's 2 goons in my corp that are goons in Eve, but that are in my corp and Echoes. And then there's a bunch of people from Horde, a couple people from low sec alliances. And yeah, we have just kind of like the Germans, basically, as a corp and Echoes from all over the place in Eve.
So, do you think that we will see Echoes at all try to shape itself into similar political affiliations as EVE Online, or is it going to be a beast all by itself?
I think it'll. I mean, honestly, I don't know if people are going to tie the EVE politics to Echoes politics. That could obviously happen, but I'm not sure. I know that there's already politics going on, like in Echoes, but if they're related to EVE politics at all, I don't know.
The
But don't
only
you think
war going on I know of is in the south between Op Force and Second Genesis.
I was more referring to the social connections and
It could be. I mean, honestly, like
Right.
I'm actually like I'm genuinely so about 10 dudes, about 10 of the people, like 10 dudes came from Eve Doi when we formed the corp in Echoes, but our corp now is at cap, which is at the moment is 120 for us because our corp CEO doesn't have all the skills at 5, and we have like 50 active people on our corp Discord, so, and 10 of those came from Eve. The rest we recruited in Echoes, and we had never played with them before, and we just sort of starting to get to know each other now. So there's certainly already communities forming, and we'll see how far it goes. But at the moment, why not? Again, I don't.
Because the friendships are the same, right? The affiliations are the same. They're not going to change. This is one of the things that I've been mentioning a lot about. Well, it's actually something that you've been talking about too, with the who's who in EVE Online, especially in the upper echelons and the very old players, and who's really friendly with who at EVE meets and all that stuff. All these social bonds and that social cohesion is pretty much not necessarily going to change just because you suddenly start playing EVE Echoes, right? So people that like each other from EVE Online will potentially also like each other in EVE Echoes. So some sort of similarity should be expected to evolve, right?
Yep. Most of probably, I would say probably like 60% of my corp have not played EVE Online though. So it's actually a large amount of people as well that haven't actually not played EVE and are now playing Echoes.
Have you managed to convince anyone of those to actually try it?
No, because I want them to play Echoes, so they're useful in the corp. And I also right now, I mean, it's hard for me to recommend. Like, I wouldn't know what to recommend to these people. Just there's a reason they're playing a mobile game and not the real deal, right? It's not because they've never heard of EVE before. Obviously, all of them have heard of EVE before, but they all have stories on why they never, like, they tried it out maybe once for 10 minutes and then they stopped playing, and they all have reasons for why they didn't keep playing. And if it's just not the kind of game they want to commit to, then it makes sense. And while it's something that I keep telling people I don't think really exists that much in EVE, but a lot of these people, they, one of the main complaints when they think about, trying out EVE or playing EVE is like, oh, but I can't catch up in EVE anymore. I'm 10 years behind. I'm 15 years behind. I can't get into the game anymore because I have a disadvantage over the players that, have been playing this game for 15 years. And that's also what draws a lot of people to Echoes, is the fact that it's sort of a fresh start, and everybody is still pretty new to the game, and it's pretty nice.
Have you explained to them that narrative is not entirely true?
Yeah, but I also don't really bother all that much. Like, I don't try to convince people in Echoes to play EVE. If they want to play EVE, they could try it out, but I'm not going to go in there and try to recruit people from Echoes into EVE because, EVE's not for everyone, and I honestly think that people have to find their way into EVE on their own. It's like, finding the path to tranquility or whatever. You just kind of have to. I can show you the door, but you're gonna have to take the door yourself. Like in the Matrix or whatever. It's something I've never successfully recruited anyone to play EVE Online. Maybe I'm a bad recruiter, or maybe it's just the way the game works. I wasn't recruited into EVE either. I found my own way in EVE, and I think it's the way it goes.
How big
it's
is your
very-
group right now, Killer, in Echoes?
Huh?
How big is your group? How big is your goal?
Well, we have like 60 dudes on Discord at the moment. So about 60 people that actively play and are on Discord. Our corp has 120 people in the corp. There's a couple of alts in there already. Like I have my 3 characters in there, so it's probably like 100 characters, and 60 of those signed up for Discord and actively chatting on there and talking to each other. So I'd say about 50 to 60 people at the moment.
Speaking of which, Echoes just surpassed 1 million players. It was announced on the Eve News today on Twitch.
No, every mobile game does pretty okay at the start. The one big thing about mobile games is how long they do well, and that's the one thing why I haven't like fully committed to Echoes yet, is because I don't know how long I'm gonna enjoy playing this. For now, I'm pretty hyped and I'm having a good time, but we'll see if I still be playing this in a month from now. And that's really what I'm waiting on.
I think things won't really kick off until we get the SOB system in.
Yeah, the good thing is that it doesn't like right now the majority of players are reaching T6 in the game, and from T6 to T7 it's over a month. So we have at least a month to play on T6 now, which is only cruisers. Like you can't get anything bigger than a cruiser for over a month now, which is kind of nice. Because you actually get some time to train into cruisers and get those skills trained up and everything. And then we'll see like battle cruisers in a month, and then from T7 to T8 it's probably going to be like 2 months or something. So it's pretty cool right now, because the meta is sort of slowly developing as people are able to fly the bigger ships and produce them and such, which is only done via time, right? You can't manually speed it up in any way. It's just how many skill points you have, basically. Sets which tier you're at.
You can buy implants though.
Yeah,
to speed up the training.
Yeah, but you can only buy them once.
I think we need to let the Killer off and have a nap or something. And we've been passing. Well, we're getting close to the 2 hours and 30 minutes mark, and I've pretty much covered everything. And I think the conclusion is that there's definitely really good reasons to both play EVE Online and EVE Echoes. And if you aren't already playing these games, definitely go and try them out. If you're an Echoes player, consider trying out EVE Online. You might actually like it, and other way around as well. Because it seems that all the veterans of EVE Online are now sitting on their emulators and tablets and forming fleets and grinding away in EVE Echoes. So on that note, I'm going to let Maddle close the stream and send us over to Raw.
And then burst jamming so that they
huge
are
thanks
affected.
to the audience and everyone that joined the talks today, especially you, Killer. Thanks for coming by.
Yep. Yeah, I'm tired because I got up very early today, and I didn't take a nap or anything like that throughout the day. So I'm just I kind of want to go to bed early, but
that's what you get for playing real EVE again.
yeah, I could go to bed early, but it's probably not going to happen because I don't actually have to get up early tomorrow.
Both
I have a day off tomorrow.
And stuff, right? How many hours have you been putting in on all the planning stuff per week?
Per week, I mean, last this week and the next week's probably not as much because I kind of handed it off for these 2 weeks to Nidusbar because I have a lot of real life projects to work on. But in the 2 weeks that I did sort of run everything, it's a couple hours. It's not as much as it used to be because we have a team of people now that do these kind of things, and it's not just me. And what would be, I was basically doing everything in terms of military planning and organizing for the most part. I had people help me out as well, of course, like Manny, and I got constant advice from Vince and so on. But it was mostly me trying to organize everything. And now we have a team, a coordination team in the coalition, so the workload's spread out. But yeah, obviously it still takes up quite some time.
So at least you get a little bit of sleep. But that might ramp up a little bit, right? They might
More than
go-
7 hours of sleep isn't healthy either. So, that's really what I'm aiming for at the moment.